Chapter 2010. The competition is very simple. The person who obtains the most birds will win the final round. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Zhou Danjin slapped his thigh and stood up, howling, "Everyone, isn't this strange competition a bit too much of a joke?" Some of the instructors from the other schools all agreed. "Joke, this is way too much of a joke. In the past, the victor was determined by strength, but this year..." Instructor Chao Dan from the Sunlight Academy also shook his head. "I've never heard of or seen such a competition before. What's the point of testing cultivation and consciousness? Isn't this just empty talk? Some people with lower cultivation bases and spiritual senses may not necessarily be unable to defeat others with their own strength, right? We're purely testing cultivation and consciousness this time," an instructor from the Dawn Academy said sternly. "We can't borrow any external power. Isn't this a true demonstration of our own strength?" Arbor turned her head in amusement and glanced at Zhou Danjin. "Instructor, your crow's beak hit the nail on the head." The instructors at the top of the 6 prefectures were indeed starting to feel restless. It was a pity that no one of her age could compare to her in terms of cultivation and consciousness. Arbor shook her head. She didn't know if she was pitying the instructors of the Dawn Academy for being unable to do anything to her in the end, or if she was laughing at their stupidity. The first step of the final round is to test cultivation. Instructor Chao Dan said exasperatedly. "What's the use of just testing cultivation? There are many people whose cultivation and strength aren't on the same level. Then how can we? Where is the person who killed my son?" A sudden roar interrupted Chao Dan's ramblings. Everyone looked up in shock and saw a hale and hearty old man leading 40 or so spirit masters of the 7th level of the spirit realm into the air above the arena. The old man's face was slightly twisted as his gaze swept up and down the arena. "Where are the people from the top schools? Hurry up and come out to meet your deaths." Arbor was a bit startled and stared blankly for a moment. She couldn't help but ask in a low voice, "Who is this old man looking for?" Qi Xianxian and the others were speechless. It turned out that after this little guy killed Zhao Li, he completely forgot about this person. It should be Zhao Li's father. Mata couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. "Jojo, don't you remember that Zhao Li from Flying Flower Academy, the one who ambushed us from behind?" With such a vivid description, Arbor immediately remembered. He nodded and said, "So it's him. What was going on?" After killing the young one, the old one actually came knocking on his door. Prince Mo reached out and held her little hand. Arbor turned and winked at him, telling him not to worry. Then, he left his seat and walked towards Zhao Li's father. "You must be Zhao Li's father." Zhao Li's father coldly glared at the little girl in front of him. He was so angry that his teeth itched. The little girl's calm and composed expression was really eye-catching. He couldn't wait to pounce on the girl in front of him and tear her to shreds. Then, he would grind her bones and scatter her ashes to dispel the hatred in his heart. Zhao Li was his precious only son. "You're here for revenge." Arbor hooked her little finger at Zhao Li's father expressionlessly. "Come. Your son will have company on the road to the Yellow Springs." All the teachers and students were speechless. "Ignorant child, you've gone too far." The 6th watch ended. Chapter 2011. Zhao He was enraged. A streak of spirit energy flew out, sweeping towards Arbor like a poisonous snake. Mo Lian's eyes were filled with anger. She leapt up, flying to Arbor's side in an instant. With a flick of her sleeve, Zhao He's spirit energy was sent back the way it came, being repelled by a mighty force. Zhao He was shocked. He never thought that a spirit energy that seemed to be as light as a feather from a young man would be able to completely defeat him. In other words, with his decades of cultivation, he couldn't even last a single move from this young man. Impossible. He must have underestimated his opponent too much. Zhao He raised his hand and roared at the 40 or so 7th level spirit masters behind him, "Stop them." His subordinates quickly moved forward, stopping the people from the elite academy. Zhao He's palms ignited with raging flames. His body twisted in midair, 2 balls of fire in his hands, fiercely slamming down towards Arbor's head. Ha! A strange look flashed through Prince Mo's eyes. A cluster of black flames floated up from his fingertips, but it was only a wisp. Zhao He suddenly realized that the raging flames in his palms were extinguished bit by bit, until the fire spirit disappeared from his hands. Zhao He didn't know that this was an instinctive fear of the sacred fire that all fire spirits in the world had. Once the sacred fire was released, no one could resist it. A huge force suddenly appeared in front of Zhao He. Before Zhao He could make a sound, he felt a huge force. Zhao He couldn't control himself and flew out at a very strange speed. Miss Zhao didn't have a chance to make a move from beginning to end. She raised her head and silently looked at Mo Lian, thinking, that bastard Zhao Li has his father's support, but she also has her husband's support. Who doesn't have relatives and friends? The little girl secretly rolled her eyes. At this time, Zhao He's outer clothes had been burned by Mo Lian's black flames. The black flames were like an evil dragon, suddenly rushing up Zhao He's body and tightly wrapping around him. Zhao He was shocked to find that the fire spirit in his body had actually disappeared. How could he dare to hesitate? He hurriedly tore off his outer robe and threw it on the ground. In the blink of an eye, a brocade robe was burned to ashes by the black flame. Zhao He looked at Mo Lian in bewilderment. If he hadn't activated his defensive barrier before attacking the little girl, he might have been the one to be burned to ashes. Zhao He's body trembled, and his legs involuntarily took half a step back. You! Who are you? Impossible. According to his information, the little girl who killed his precious son was simply a little ant who came from the lower star field to the Shantian prefecture. She had only stayed in the Shantian prefecture for half a year. But the man beside her. However, it made him instinctively feel a trace of fear. Zhao He was very clear that he couldn't see through this young man's cultivation. How could this man be so strong? Was he really from the lower star field? What made Zhao He collapse the most was that of the 40 or so 7th level spirit masters he had brought, half of them had been killed by the people from the top academy. The remaining 20 or so 7th level spirit masters didn't dare to continue fighting and quickly retreated to Zhao He's side. Cough, cough, cough. Zhao He clutched his chest and stared at the people from Arbor in shock. You guys. Chapter 2012. It was hard to believe. Not only were these ants from the lower star domain arrogant, but they were also able to beat up so many of his 7th rank spirit masters in one go. What kind of strength was this? Zhao He scanned the people from the top academies with lingering fear. He didn't know that there were several spirit supremacies and immortal supremacies among the people from the top academies. If it weren't for the fact that these great gods were afraid that the heavenly Tao would come looking for trouble, they would have only hesitated to make a move. At this moment, not even half of Zhao He's people would be left. If little Taisui and the others got serious, Zhao He wouldn't be able to escape the fate of being killed even if he brought hundreds or thousands of great spirit masters with him. In the face of absolute strength, Zhao He could only bow his head. If he wanted to live, he had to bow his head as soon as possible. When he thought of his only son, Zhao Li, Zhao He's heart felt uneasy again. No way. He couldn't just abandon his son like this. Zhao Li had died an innocent death. He had to take justice back from this indifferent girl. Even if he couldn't take it back, he had to take a bite out of that girl. Zhao Li was about to step forward to pester her when he heard Mo Lian say coldly, take care of him. Yes. 4 or 5 shadow guards immediately appeared behind her. Under Tong's lead, they used their spirit power to lock the shocked Zhao He in place. They dragged along a few of Zhao He's disciples and immediately disappeared in front of everyone. Miss Chow blinked, then shook Missouri Lian's wrist. Who is he? How come I've never seen him before? He's called Tong, someone the Emperor sent over. Let's use him first. Currently, he was still lacking manpower. When he returned to the Divine Prefecture, he could slowly replenish them. Arbor nodded. Oh. Jojo, don't worry. Mo Lian raised a hand to touch her cheek. I can take care of these idle people. Arbor couldn't be bothered with Zhao He's matter. Since Prince Mo had taken care of everything for her, Miss Chow was naturally happy to be idle. Lian, that person called Tong was sent over by the Emperor of the Divine Prefecture. Mo Lian nodded. Reliable? I don't know yet. Mo Lian shook her head. But for now, he's obedient and hasn't caused me any trouble. Oh, Arbor said. Okay. After Zhao He's group was dragged away, the interrupted competition finally returned to normal. It was only on the surface that he looked calm. As for the people's hearts, they looked at Mo Lian with eyes full of stormy waves. Arbor was too lazy to care. The first event of the finals will be held in the afternoon. You can go back to the inn and rest for the first half of the day. Everyone was speechless. Isn't this competition of yours a bit too tight? She hated that she couldn't even use the time to eat and sleep. In just a few days, he had to fight so many matches. The intensity was high, and the strength of his opponents was high. Many people couldn't hold on any longer. Now that they heard that they could only rest for half a day, no one grumbled anymore. They immediately pulled their teams and hurried back to the inn. Are you kidding? Zhou Danjin said indignantly. This year's competition is simply a mess. I wonder who's the one who keeps coming up with these lousy ideas. They're just trying to fool people. Little Fatty and the others comforted Instructor Zhou, then returned to Onping Inn with the other instructors. Arbor didn't care. Chapter 2013. It didn't matter if she rested or not, that it was all the same to her anyway. She wasn't tired at all. It didn't matter if she rested or not. Zhou Danjin brought the students back to Onping Inn to rest. They planned to have lunch together. When Arbor returned to the inn, Mo Lian pulled her back to her room to sleep. Miss Chow didn't feel sleepy at all. Although they had been rowdy the entire night last night, she could be considered to have slept for a while as she leaned on Mo Lian's body intermittently. Hubby is sleepy. Mo Lian pulled her small hand as they trotted upstairs. Leaving behind a bunch of people who were crying piteously for food, he anxiously watched their backs as they left, secretly grinding his teeth. Waiter! Bring out whatever food you have. Qi Xianxian helplessly watched the couple leave. She could only summon the waiter in the inn. Mai Chao's section break, 90,000 miles away from the border city of the Divine Land. Inside the Pangda clan's camp in the Aurora Sandland. A woman's painful howls could be heard. Princess Jing held the brush in one hand and put the finishing touches on the drawing paper. Then, she raised her head and glanced at the maidservant beside her. What's wrong? Third miss, you haven't recovered yet. Xianlong bowed to her respectfully. Third miss needs some time to be reborn. Pfft, Princess Jing sneered. She threw her brush onto the washers and said indifferently, her reborn. Don't joke around, Xianlong. She's just a clown at best. Xianlong lowered her head and didn't say anything. Jing Linyao didn't want to pursue the matter. She lifted the curtain and strode out. Come with me. Her tent wasn't close to third Miss Jing Minyao's tent. When Jing Linyao slowly walked over, she happened to see Wang Liming carrying a lunchbox and walking towards her step by step. When Wang Liming saw Jing Linyao, she immediately bit her lips and hid the hatred in her eyes. She smiled and nodded at Jing Linyao. "Your Highness, are you here to see San-er?" Jing Linyao nodded with a smile and strode into Jing Minyao's tent. At a glance, she saw Jing Minyao lying on the bed like a skinny monkey. Her eyes were fixed on Jing Linyao, who had just crossed the threshold. "Are you here to laugh at me?" Jing Minyao opened her mouth and her voice was unbelievably hoarse. She wanted to slap the bed under her with all her might, but she didn't even have the strength to raise her hand to slap it. Jing Linyao suppressed the smile in her eyes. Looking at her foolish and fearless younger sister, she lightly said, "Third younger sister, big sister advises you not to get angry." It took a lot of effort for the soul congregation bell to gather your soul and allow you to open your eyes again. You have to cherish it. You. Jing Minyao trembled with anger. You. If you hadn't schemed against me, would I have ended up in such a miserable state? Jing Linyao pursed her lips and snickered. "Third younger sister, you're wrong to say that. Big sister came to check on your body out of goodwill. Why did you bite me? Get out of my sight." Jing Minyao struggled to throw an empty porcelain bowl at the head of the bed. However, she didn't have the strength to do so. Her head tilted and fell heavily on the bed. Jing Linyao's eyes flashed. Chapter 2014. With a faint smile, Jing Linyao said to Wang Liming, "Madam, if you have time, you should spend more time with my sister and persuade her to control her temper." "What do you mean?" "Outsiders are not like our family. As her elder sister, I have to give in to her in everything and accommodate her in all aspects." "But what about outsiders? For example, that crown princess, will she let go of my sister?" "Madam, you don't know how to teach your sister." Jing Linyao smiled with a trace of coldness. "After she goes out, there will be outsiders to teach her." "Don't you think so?" Old Mistress Jing was so angry that she fell backwards, her beautiful face flushed red. "Patriarch is here." An announcement interrupted everyone's conversation in the tent. Jing Minyao angrily punched the bed and shouted to her father who was walking in, "Father, elder sister is bullying me and my mother again." Panga clan's patriarch, Jing Zhui, was over 70 years old, but his body was very strong and he walked very fast. As soon as he entered, he couldn't help but frown at his eldest daughter, Jing Linyao. "What are you doing here?" Jing Linyao secretly sneered, but her face showed a very gentle smile. "Father, after more than 10 days of soul gathering by the soul gathering bell, my sister finally woke up, but her body is still very weak. As her elder sister, I naturally have to visit her. It's just that my sister has always misunderstood me." Jing Linyao smiled. "I didn't say anything. I just wanted Madam to teach her well. But she said that I bullied her." "Father, after all, this is a lesson learned. If Min Min continues to be so arrogant, she will kick a hard iron plate like this time, and there will be no turning back." "Shut up." Wang Liming was furious. This woman kept on cursing her daughter. Did she want her Min Min to die again? Jing Linyao innocently looked at Mrs. Jing, Wang Liming. She then turned her head to look at her family head, Jing Zhi, who was looking at her thoughtfully. She smiled faintly. "If there's nothing else, you can go back first." Jing Zhui said coldly, looking at Princess Jing without any fatherly warmth. Jing Linyao nodded obediently and bowed to Jing clan head. "Daughter will take her leave first." "Master." Just as she stepped out of the tent, she heard Madame Jing sobbing. "Look at how eldest miss is behaving. She doesn't put me in her eyes." "Father. It's Jing Linyao who hurt me," Jing Linyao, that woman. Father, I want to kill her, I want to kill. Ah, cough, 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 cough. Jing Minyao's body twitched violently. Her mother, Madame Jing, was scared out of her wits. She hurriedly rushed up to hug her daughter and shouted, Min Min, Min Min. Min, don't get emotional. Didn't you hear what our family's witch doctor? After using the soul-gathering bell to return to your soul, you must maintain a stable state of mind for the next 15 days. Don't get too excited. Otherwise, even if you succeed in the future, there will be repercussions in your brain. I can't control my emotions. Jing Minyao screamed, Father, kill Jing Linyao for me. Kill her. It's her who hurt me, it's her. She must be the one who told me about Prince Mo's consort, it's her who led me to provoke that witch, that bitch. Ah, 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 ah. Jing Minyao screamed on the bed with a twisted face. Chapter 2015. Old Mistress Jing was so frightened that she quickly pressed down on her daughter's body. Daughter, daughter. Don't be so noisy. If you do this, you'll only be harming yourself. Mother. Mother. I'm in so much pain, so much pain. Min Min, where does it hurt? Mother, I'm in pain all over, so painful, so painful. Madame Jing held her down, wiping her tears as she said, Min Min, bear with it a little more. The soul congregation bell is like this, after it successfully gathers the soul, you won't fully recover immediately. You'll need time to recuperate. Don't make a fuss anymore. Jing Minyao's body twitched, her face twisted. Clan head Jing glanced at her, sighed, and asked two servants to help Madame Jing hold down Jing Minyao's limbs. Jing Linyao stood outside the tent. Hearing this, she couldn't help but smile faintly, turned and left. There was nothing good to hear after this, it was naturally the drama that had been going on all along. Madame Jing was just going to sue Princess Jing. Jing Linyao curled her lips and slowly fiddled with her fingers. She slowly walked towards her own tent. If she was so easily defeated by that woman's pillow talk, then she wouldn't be Jing Linyao, the only Princess Jing in the entire Jing family. Clan head Jing walked out of his daughter's tent with his hands behind his back, his face still didn't look good. His face was calm as he walked silently for a while. Behind him was an old servant who was holding a large brocade box in his hand. Jing Qian. This one is here. You have to keep an eye on the soul congregation bell. It only has one use left. It would be a lie if clan head Jing said he didn't feel the pain of using up the soul congregation bell for no reason because of his daughter's matter. Yes, clan head. Also, send some people down to investigate the background of that crown princess of the divine land. How did an ant from the lower star field kill his daughter Min Min? Yes. Clan head Jing sneered, crown princess of the divine land. A woman from the lower star field is destined to not be recognized by the great emperor. The crown prince of the divine land is really a capricious person, he actually got married in the lower star field. If this news were to spread to the divine prefecture, it would definitely shock the entire nation. I saw a Ren section break. The next day, during the morning court session, the Zhangzhou emperor happily announced something to his subjects. Zhangzhou's fourth majesty entered the imperial ancestral temple and was chosen by the devil monarch's inheritance. He was about to inherit the devil monarch's bloodline and all the martial arts inheritance. Hearing this, all the officials beamed with joy and congratulated His Majesty on his success. The Zhangzhou great emperor laughed loudly. Indeed, for over 1,000 years, ever since the founding emperor inherited the bloodline of the demon emperor, every generation after that had been filled with hope. They hoped that their children would be able to inherit the bloodline of the demon emperor. However, things did not go as they wished. Every time, they ended in failure. How could he not be happy that Songzhou's great emperor had come? I plan to confer the title of Prince Chen and bestow the land of Huaqing to the south of Zhangzhou to him. Your Majesty is wise and mighty. Although Prince Chen is young, he has inherited the bloodline of the Devil Emperor. His future is limitless. Whether it is for the country or for the people, Your Majesty's decision is a good one. I believe that Prince Chen will definitely be a rare talent who can stabilize the country in the future. Rongli took 2 steps forward and knelt down. Father, is still in seclusion. Please leave the housewarming matter to me. Chapter 2016. The second prince and the third prince hurriedly took a few steps forward, prostrated themselves on the ground, and said in unison, "We are also willing to help." The Zhangzhou emperor looked at his 3 sons with a gratified expression and nodded happily. "Since you are so considerate, I will leave the matter of moving to you." "Yes. Yes." His 3 sons answered in succession. No matter what they thought in their hearts, they looked quite normal on the surface. Each of their faces was filled with joy that they were happy for their younger brother and proud of their younger brother. However, no one knew whether the depths of his heart were bleeding or not. After all, the land of Huaqin in the south of Zhangzhou was a real fertile land. With this piece of land, Duan Xiaoxi would become one of the wealthiest people in Zhangzhou for no reason. In the future, he would probably have cramps in his hands even if he counted the taxes he paid. "Your Majesty." An imperial censor stepped forward and braced himself to ask, "Your Majesty has already conferred the title of Prince Qin. According to the ancestral rules, even if he doesn't move to the fief immediately, he has to move out of the palace and live elsewhere. If Prince Qin continues to stay in Taiji Palace, wouldn't it be a little inappropriate?" The Zhangzhou emperor waved his hand and said, "Xiaoxi has just returned. Let him live in the palace for a while." Since he had said so, no one dared to provoke the Zhangzhou emperor. The emperor was very happy. It was rare for his son to be so promising. He inherited the bloodline of the demon emperor when he came back. This was no joke. All the ministers silently thought in their hearts, Prince Chen is probably going to have a meteoric rise. The second prince and the third prince were both in their early 30s, and neither of them had been conferred the title of prince by the emperor. How old was Duan Xiaoxi? In the upper 3 provinces, where people generally lived for a long time, Duan Xiaoxi was really pitifully young. Today, the emperor was in a good mood. All the ministers felt that even if they reported a few sad political affairs, the emperor would not be too harsh on them because he was in a good mood. Thus, the morning court session ended in a harmonious manner. After the court was dismissed, the second prince and the third prince left the town hall. They hurriedly caught up with Crown Prince Rongli and asked with a smile, "Eldest brother, this matter of moving is an order from father. It's better that we do it as soon as possible." Rongli glanced at them and nodded. "Let's go." The 3 of them called for a carriage and arrived at South Jiao Hall. The servants in the hall had already received the news and knew that the great emperor had personally given the order to move their masters. They had already packed their masters' clothes and necessities and had been waiting for a long time. Rongli looked around and nodded. "Is there anything that hasn't been sorted out? Let's move over in the afternoon." The little eunuch had a troubled look on his face. "This servant does not dare to enter the master's study." Rongli nodded and walked slowly towards the study. He said calmly, "Since it's not easy to tidy it up, let's move the things in the study, including the tables and chairs. That way, we won't leave behind anything important." Everyone was overjoyed when they heard this. With the Crown Prince's guidance, everyone immediately went to the study to move things. When they moved to the big Nanmu desk, 4 or 5 people felt that it was not strong enough to carry it, so they went to find some helpers to carry it. When they walked to the door, the big desk scraped against the door, and they quickly stabilized it. Dong! A dark drawer suddenly fell from under the desk, and a painting scroll rolled out from it. Chapter 2017. Rollercoasters was slightly surprised. His eyes fell on the scroll of the painting. He signaled a young eunuch to come forward and pick it up. The young eunuch understood and stepped forward. He bent down and picked up the painting scroll from the ground. He untied the bright red ribbon tied to the painting scroll and slowly unfolded the painting scroll, presenting it in front of everyone. The water was green, and the mist was vast. A girl with ice skin and jade bones stood expressionlessly under a blossoming peach tree. Her eyes were cold and clear as she stared at you. It was as if she was going to walk out of the painting. Rollercoasters and the two princes behind him were stunned for a moment. They had never seen such a cold and resolute girl. Her eyes were so lifelike that it was as if she was really looking at you. It made you involuntarily want to take a few steps closer. The young eunuch holding the painting was obsessed. He reached out to touch the girl's cheek. But he saw two green stars shoot out from the girl's eyes. They went straight between his eyebrows. "Ah!" the eunuch screamed. His eyes were wide open in horror. In just a few seconds, his eyes were hit by the green light. The scroll in the eunuch's hand fell to the ground. He immediately covered his face and screamed. He rolled on the ground and hissed. The servants who were carrying the furniture around were all scared silly. They didn't dare to approach the painting that was unfolded on the ground. They all stared at the painting of a beautiful young girl as if they were looking at a demon. "Who allowed you to touch the master's painting?" A pure white figure suddenly landed beside the young eunuch. With a sweep of his palm, the young eunuch was swept out of the door and thrown outside. Rollercoasters looked carefully. He saw a man in white with a face like a full moon. He was tall and handsome. He had a pair of slightly raised foxy eyes. There was a hint of anger. He reached out and gently sucked the scroll into his hand. He flicked his sleeve to sweep away the non-existent dust on the scroll. The man gently closed the scroll and put it in a brocade box. He coldly glanced at everyone present. "Do you want to get out of here, or do you want me to throw you out?" The second prince's eyes were angry. He couldn't help but shout, "Who are you? Why are you talking to us like this? Do you know who we are?" Even if fourth brother was here, he wouldn't use such a tone to talk to us. Boom! Just as he finished shouting, the second prince felt his entire body fly up and fall out of the window. He did not have any strength to retaliate and was slapped to the ground in an instant. A true seven-tailed celestial fox holy beast. The third prince looked in horror at the 7 long tails that had suddenly appeared behind the white-clothed man. He raised his eyes in a daze and looked at him with some fear in his heart. Heavens, just what kind of background did fourth brother have? Why was he able to contract a 7-tailed celestial fox sacred beast even though he had been living in the lower star area for so long? Rollercoasters' eyes also had a hint of contemplation, hiding a hint of jealousy. He cupped his hands and bowed to the white-robed man. "Sorry, sir, it was us brothers who acted recklessly. However, we really don't have any ulterior motives. We are just following Imperial Father's orders." The 7-tailed celestial fox raised her hand to stop him from continuing. "Leave this place immediately. Don't disturb Master." Rollercoasters was extremely frustrated in his heart, but he was also helpless against the 7-tailed heavenly fox. Chapter 2018. Rollercoasters bowed his head and cupped his hands at the 7-tailed divine fox, then turned around and gave the third prince a look. After leaving, he helped the groaning second prince up, and the group walked out of South Chow Hall. The seven-tailed divine fox coldly glanced at their backs, then looked down at the brocade box in his hand before disappearing from the study. Soon, his figure appeared in the imperial ancestral temple's inner hall. He raised his head to look at his master, who was contained within the purple crystal ball and enveloped in rays of purple light. Raising the brocade box in his hand, the seven-tailed divine fox urgently said, "Master, the painting is safe and sound. I've already retrieved it. Please cultivate in peace without distractions. Be careful not to suffer from chi deviation." As soon as he finished speaking, the person who was originally struggling in the purple light slowly calmed down. The seven-tailed divine fox helplessly shook his head. He lowered his head to open the brocade box and took out the painting scroll. He slowly unfolded it and sighed softly at the expressionless little stoic in the painting. On the other side, Zhangzhou's crown prince and his entourage hastily came out of South Jiao Hall, each of them cutting a sorry figure. They were also carrying a eunuch behind them. This eunuch was Rong Li's personal eunuch. At this time, he was already covered in bruises, and the mournful cries from his mouth gradually died down. In the end, he turned into a corpse. The two eunuchs who were carrying him were so scared that their faces were drained of color, but they did not dare to carelessly leave him behind. They carried the young eunuch all the way out of South Jiao Hall, 1 foot high, 1 foot low. Cough, cough. Cough. The second prince couldn't stop coughing violently, and his eyes spouted flames of fury. That bastard actually poisoned the painting. The third prince had already seen the little eunuch's death, and an inexplicable chill rose in his heart. Rong Li couldn't help but laugh bitterly. It seems that we still underestimated this new younger brother's methods and scheming. Look at that ruthless heart. Wanting to die just by touching the painting. This kind of viciousness was also rarely seen in the world. What method exactly was that? The second prince asked irritably as he clutched his aching chest. Just now, he simply didn't know what was going on and was sent flying by the seven-tailed divine fox's tail. There was simply no comparison in terms of strength. This made him inexplicably feel that in front of his fourth brother, he was just a trash whose cultivation and strength could not be any more trashy. This painting should have a hidden mechanism. Once it is touched by an external force, it will trigger the mechanism in the hidden layer. It was just that this mechanism was too exquisite. It actually shot out from the eyes of the woman in the painting, making it impossible to guard against. One had to know that when they saw the painting just now, everyone's eyes were immediately attracted by the cold eyes of the woman in the painting. They were almost unable to shift their gazes away. A shrewd glint flashed through Rong Li's eyes. His original surname was Duan. He's a member of the Duan clan, a concealed weapons aristocratic family on Seikong planet. Duan clan. The Duan clan of the Divine Land. That's right. The Duan family of the Divine Prefecture should be his maternal family. Damned little bastard, how ruthless. When the second prince thought of the embarrassment just now, he couldn't help but get angry. Big brother, who do you think the woman in the painting is? How could he hide such a treasure in the secret compartment of his desk? You even tampered with the painting to prevent people from touching it. Rong Li snorted softly and said with a smile, I'm guessing that this is probably fourth brother's sweetheart. Big brother, do you still remember the appearance of the woman in the painting just now? I roughly remember, but I reckon that no one can draw out the charm in it. Chapter 2019. Duan Yu's painting was too lifelike. When the woman in the painting stared at you with her icy bead-like eyes, they could truly see a trace of coldness in them. This little lady was still young, and her facial features had just begun to develop. After a few years, she would probably stun the world. The servants carried the unlucky little eunuch's corpse and left without consulting anyone. Crown Prince Rong Li still felt very unlucky. He actually lost a clever eunuch on this trip for nothing. This caused his dissatisfaction toward Duan Yu to rise to another level. This Duan Yu's temperament was too unpredictable. The three brothers returned to the Crown Prince's palace and invited a royal physician to examine the second prince's injuries. The Crown Prince called over several painters, and after repeatedly drawing more than a dozen pictures, he picked up a young girl's painting on the table and carefully examined it. He still felt that the charm was lacking and that it was only about 50%, no, 40% similar to the beauty painting he saw before. This doesn't look like it at all. The third prince angrily slapped the paper. The painters all shrunk their heads and hastily knelt down to beg for forgiveness, not daring to even breathe loudly. The Crown Prince waved his hand and said, "It's about enough. After all, these painters haven't seen that painting with their own eyes, so it's already pretty good that they can draw a 40% likeness. All right, you can withdraw." The painters all sent Crown Prince Rongli grateful gazes and hastily bowed a few more times before withdrawing in a single file. Humph, a bunch of mediocre talents. The third prince pursed his lips pickily. They usually only know how to brag in front of royal father about how impressive their painting skills are. In reality, when it comes to improvising, each and every one of them can't do it. Rongli waved his hand and said, "Forget it. Don't make things difficult for me. Fourth younger brother's painting is too exquisite, and he put in 100% of his effort. How could a mere few painters portray the cool charm between that woman's brows?" Humph. The third prince snorted in dissatisfaction and looked at the painting left and right. The more he looked at it, the more disgusted he felt. "Eldest brother, do you think we can find the person with this painting?" "Not sure." Rongli shook his head. "However, if we investigate from Seacombe planet where fourth younger brother is, I reckon we should be able to find this woman." "That's good." The third prince's eyes flashed, and he chuckled. "Fourth brother is really something. You can't forget a girl. Then just bring her to the mansion and take her in." "Forget it. As third elder brother, I'll help him to the end. Help him find this woman and bring her to Imperial Father." A faint smile flashed across Rongli's eyes, but he didn't say anything. Since the third prince was in high spirits, he didn't want to stop him. After all, it wasn't appropriate for him, as the elder brother, to interfere with his younger brother's interests. Rongli nodded and said with a smile, "Third brother, don't go too far." "Of course." The third prince chuckled as he nodded. After all, she is fourth brother's sweetheart. Even the painting is hidden, unwilling to let other people touch it. If by any chance this real person bumps into something and CD comes to fight me to the death, what should I do? Rongli didn't say anything else and waved for someone to serve the meal. After a busy day, he was already a little tired. His body seemed to be getting worse by the day. Mountains and rivers stretched for thousands of miles, beautiful and prosperous. How could he allow himself to give it up with his own hands? No one could take anything away from him, Rongli. Chapter 2020. Compared to the fighting and killing of the past few days, tonight's competition was truly too relaxing. A spirit testing stone had been placed on the stage long ago, erected in the middle of the field. The members of the remaining 30 teams lined up one after another and walked past the spirit testing stone in succession. Slap a palm on the spirit testing stone and stand still for 2 seconds. A horizontal line corresponding to your cultivation level would appear on the left side of the spirit testing stone. One horizontal line was naturally the first level of the spirit realm, and 10 was a 10th level Great Spirit Master. Simple and clear. They didn't need to use any brain power. They just had to walk up and take the test. In terms of cultivation, Arbor naturally wasn't the highest among these people. The test had already been going on for more than 2 hours. Currently, the person with the highest cultivation level among them was a student from Shuntian Prefecture's Moonlight Academy. After taking the test, they discovered that their cultivation had reached the 11th level of a Great Spirit Master. Everyone's mood was a bit rueful. The young man in front of them looked to be in his early 30s. For the Zhangzhou continent, this was truly a young man. Excellent Qing Academy, Li Nanshan. When the referee announced this name, everyone tensed up. Their palms involuntarily curled up. Their eyes were full of vigilance as they looked at Li Nanshan, who was quickly walking over. Arbor turned her head to look. Li Nanshan gave her a very friendly nod. Hence, Xiaomu also nodded at him before her gaze landed on the spirit testing stone. This spirit testing stone was completely jet black and shone with light. 3 large, crooked characters were written at the top, Spirit Testing Stone. Li Nanshan walked forward and slapped the spirit testing stone with his palm. When the spirit testing stone exploded with a burst of intense light, the people in the back couldn't help but stand up from their seats with some excitement. They remembered that Li Nanshan seemed to have already stepped into the ranks of a 10th level Great Spirit Master in the last competition. They didn't know if he'd. Zing zang. Horizontal lines appeared on the spirit testing stone one after another. Everyone carefully counted down and discovered that 12 horizontal lines had appeared on the spirit testing stone. 12. Everyone's tiger bodies shook. A few people in the front row jumped up from their chairs and cried out loudly, a 12th level Great Spirit Master. My heavens! This senior brotherly Nanshan of Juqing Academy had actually increased his cultivation level. 3 years ago, he was a 10th rank Great Spirit Master. Now, he had actually risen to the realm of a 12th rank Great Spirit Master. What kind of terrifying speed was this? He could actually raise his cultivation by 2 levels in 3 years. What did he eat to grow up? How could anyone increase their cultivation like this? People with ordinary aptitudes like them could spend their entire lives in the low-level Spirit Master realm. Even if it did increase, it would only increase once every 5 to 8 years. Wasn't Li Nanshan's rate of increase a little too much? This was the advancement of a spiritualist, not some small mystic cultivator from a lower star domain. Everyone silently complained in their hearts as they looked at the others with shining eyes. Duanmu Qing from the top academy. The referee intentionally glanced at the people from the top academies. It was undeniable that the group of students from the top academies were like dark horses in their eyes. Would this group of people be able to shine in the cultivation test once again? Everyone was looking forward to it. Especially everyone's gazes landed on the expressionless little stoic. This little stoic was so strong. Would she stun all of them during the test later? For some reason, they were actually looking forward to it. Chapter 2021. Duanmu Qing, Level 5 Spirit Master. This child was still so young, yet he was already a Level 5 Spirit Master. It had to be said that he was very talented and intelligent. The judge who was reading out Duanmu Qing's cultivation deliberately sized Duanmu Qing up a few more times, a slight look of approval in his eyes. Next, the top academy, Ma Ta. Ma Ta walked forward and slapped the spirit testing stone. 2 horizontal lines immediately appeared on the left side. Level 2 Spirit Master. Little fatty Ko Hongwen was also a Level 2 Spirit Master. As for Xian, when she slapped down, the spirit testing stone showed the words, Mystic Level 15. The word Mystic in front meant that Xian had yet to enter the spirit realm. When it was finally Arbor's turn, everyone looked at her expectantly, making the little fellow somewhat confused. Since the start of the queue, those people's excited gazes had been on her, as if they were looking at a guest from another star region. However, when she slapped down and left 3 marks on the spirit testing stone, those expectant gazes suddenly turned into shock and suspicion. It couldn't be, right? Such a strong girl, who could kill Zhao Li in an instant, was actually just a little third-rank spirit master. To be honest, most of the people present thought that even if Miss Xiao was not as stunning as Li Nanshan, a level 12 Great Spirit Master, she should at least be a level 8 or level 9 Spirit Master. But now, everyone looked at her doubtfully, and Miss Xiao also looked back at them with a puzzled expression. Lowering her head to look at her jade palm and then at the spirit testing stone, Arbor expressionlessly returned to the queue. Some of the academy's students couldn't help but curse in their hearts. Is there a need for the instructors to be so nervous about a mere level 3 spirit master? They even specially changed the competition rules for this girl. However, when they thought of this girl's talisman skills and medical skills, everyone couldn't help but feel relieved. This girl's cultivation as a level 3 spirit master couldn't be considered low, right? After all, she cultivated both alchemy and talisman skills at the same time. Even so, her cultivation was still much higher than normal people. This was truly admirable. Thinking of this, those doubtful eyes couldn't help but return to normal. Arbor didn't know that these people were thinking so much. Seeing that these people were no longer looking at her strangely, she was too lazy to pursue the matter. Some of the students from the other academies who hadn't been amazed by the top academies had higher cultivation bases than Arbor and the others. When they looked at Arbor and the others again, they felt that these guys from the top academies weren't that amazing anymore. Arbor naturally didn't know that he had just walked around the altar and was now being despised and kicked down. Even if they knew, they would probably just laugh it off. Cultivation. What the hell was cultivation? Her strength had never depended on one's cultivation level. Arbor turned his head slightly and glanced at the people with different expressions. He frowned and didn't say anything. In the morning of the next day, everyone gathered at the Xinghua Martial Arts Arena as usual to carry out the second part of the final competition, the test of spiritual sense. The spiritual sense test was relatively simple. There were over 100 students sitting on the field. Everyone was asked to sit cross-legged in a meditative position. The referee came forward and gave everyone a pen and paper. His voice was gentle as he said, "The spiritual sense test is very simple. Write down what you see on the eaves 1 mile to the east. Write it down on the paper and don't discuss it in whispers." This was a test of spiritual sense. Arbor picked up the pen and started to write. She put down the pen in a flash. Wash up, sleep, wake up, and read more. Chapter 2022. As time passed, the students on the field were able to see farther and farther away, and more people were eliminated. What is 20 miles to the south? Arbor wrote, "A great battle between a snake and a man." Duanmu Qing furrowed his brows, but in the end, he threw down his pen and conceded defeat. There were only 3 people on the field at the moment. Excellent Qing Academy's level 12 Great Spirit Master, Li Nanshan. Moonlight Academy's level 11 Great Spirit Master, Zhou Xiao. Top Academy's level 3 Spirit Master, Arbor. Everyone's doubtful gazes fell on Arbor again. This girl was too strange. A large number of level 8 and level 9 Spirit Masters on the field were eliminated at this moment. But this trifling level 3 Spirit Master had very smoothly persevered until now. Was there no problem? There was a big problem. This meant that a level 3 Spirit Master's spiritual sense was actually comparable to a level 12 Great Spirit Master's spiritual sense. As everyone knew, a Spirit Master's spiritual sense usually didn't exceed 30% of their cultivation base. A Spirit Master with outstanding talent, no matter how good their roots were, would never exceed 60% of their cultivation base. Therefore, Li Nanshan's spiritual sense was currently at the 4th level, which couldn't be more normal. Moonlight Academy's level 11 Great Spirit Master, Zhou Xiao, had a spiritual sense slightly inferior to Li Nanshan's. That little girl. Wasn't her spiritual sense a bit too monstrous? Normally, the little girl should have been eliminated early on. Arbor expressionlessly put down the pen in her hand. Li Nanshan nodded slightly at him. This man was 25 years old, handsome, and had an upright temperament that made people feel very comfortable looking at him. This time, our dear Qiao Mu, who was a small level 3 spiritual cultivator, was actually on equal footing with him in her spiritual conscious. If it were someone else with a strong jealousy, they would definitely raise their suspicions to the referee, suspecting whether Qiao Mu had cheated by opening some treasure that could temporarily increase her spiritual conscious. Li Nanshan, however, didn't say anything from beginning to end. Zhou Xiao looked to be in his 30s. He was fair and plump, but also had a good temper. At this time, his face was slightly pale. Because he used his spiritual sense to check the distant environment again and again, the further the distance, the greater the consumption of spiritual sense. Zhou Xiao's appearance showed that he couldn't hold on for much longer. Smart people naturally wouldn't damage their own conscience for the sake of a competition. It was better to stop before going too far. Not long after, as expected, Zhou Xiao sighed and threw down his pen to admit defeat. He raised his hand and cupped his hands toward Li Nanshan and Arbor. How is that possible? Li Nanshan didn't say anything, but the crowd began to discuss again. Even Moonlight Academy's Zhou Xiao was eliminated. That's a level 11 Great Spirit Master. How can this young lady's spiritual sense possibly be higher than a level 11 Great Spirit Master? Could it be that they did something in secret? What level of spiritual sense is she? Fools! Qi Xianxian glared fiercely at the few people who were gossiping. Why don't you show us what you've done in front of everyone? 30 miles north, there is a piece of paper hanging on a tree. Copy the contents of the paper. Wow! The crowd let out a low cry of surprise. Previously, he had only described the scene and had taken a look before withdrawing his spiritual sense. Now, he had to use his spiritual sense to check the contents of the paper, word by word. This consumption was great. Li Nanshan's lips couldn't help but reveal a trace of a wry smile. She raised her head and saw that the girl had already picked up a pen and was quickly writing on the paper. Catching up on yesterday. Chapter 2023. Li Nanshan saw that Xiao Lian's complexion was normal, and that she didn't seem tired at all. He couldn't help but sigh and drop his pen with a smile. I've lost. There was no need to continue the competition. Seeing that the little girl had picked up her pen without hesitation, she should have clearly seen the contents of Beyond 30 Li's paper. However, he felt that he couldn't do what she did. Just looking at the densely packed words on that piece of paper made him feel dizzy. Li Nanshan knew that this was because he had overused his spiritual awareness, which was why he felt his vision turning black. If he continued to use his spiritual awareness, his own conscience would be affected. Therefore, Li Nanshan very straightforwardly threw down his pen and admitted defeat. He stood up and nodded slightly at Arbor. He chuckled and said, Mrs. Spiritual Awareness is indeed powerful. Nanshan admits defeat. Arbor nodded at him and said with an indifferent expression, Brother, you flatter me. After Li Nanshan left the arena, Chief Judge Hong Qi walked up and silently glanced at Arbor. The overall ranking and individual ranking will be recalculated according to the points you obtain from completing the first and second events. It will be announced tomorrow morning. Arbor nodded. According to the progress of this event, their top academy would definitely be at the top. Even if they couldn't get first or second place, they would at least be third. She had to go to Brinset Island. Unless those academies joined forces and secretly did something to them, the top academy shouldn't fall behind. Of course, under the watchful eyes of so many people, if those academy instructors still wanted to save face, they probably wouldn't do such a disgusting thing. Arbor thought for a moment and stood up. All right, if there's nothing else, everyone can disperse. Since that was the case, everyone followed suit and left. Everyone felt that these two events were very easy, but seeing Miss Chiao's leisurely and self-assured manner, their hearts were filled with deep doubts. However, since the chief judge of the competition didn't have much of an opinion about Arbor, it meant that Arbor's spiritual awareness score was definitely real. After all, with so many judges and so many pairs of eyes, it was impossible that everyone couldn't see her movements clearly. Everyone returned to the inn and gathered, looking very happy. After the third round tomorrow, they would be able to finalize the name list for the trip to Brinset Island. Zhou Danjin now felt that their top academy's hopes were quite high. I'm a bit curious about that Brinset Island now. I heard that there are currently 3 spirit domains on that island. It's very beneficial for cultivating spirit energy. Qi Xianxian smiled. Upon hearing this, Xiaomu asked them curiously, is that island very big? Zhou Danjin nodded, it's pretty big. And there's a group of islands. If we can explore it carefully, we might be able to find more spirit domains. If that's the case, then why do these spirit domains belong to the academy? Wouldn't the prefecture lords of the 6 prefectures come to snatch such a precious place? Oh, that interesting. It teases, T want to T before they test twos. T have teat, st like TT the TTTTTs. Chapter 2024. Arbor nodded. If that's the case, then this newly developed Brinset Island was originally ownerless. Zhou Danji nodded and said, as for why it became a place where one could only stay after participating in the ranking competition, it was because the students of the other families were quite jealous of this spirit realm. After some negotiations, it was decided that the academies of the 6 prefectures would compete fairly to distribute these 3 treasured lands. Thus, the top academies of the 6 prefectures worked together to create the academy ranking competition, using the spirit realm of Brinset Island as the prize. The academy ranking competition has been held every 3 years for a long time. All the academies of the 6 prefectures can participate. The winner will not only obtain the right to cultivate in the spirit realm, but also receive all kinds of rewards from the 6 prefectures. Zhou Danjin said emotionally. Instructor Hu also added, after all, the talents cultivated by these academies will still have to return to the 6 prefectures after 3 to 5 years and be used by them. Arbor nodded in understanding, thinking, this is probably why the 6 prefectures lord is too lazy to compete with the other academies for Brinset Island. After all, academies are academies. No matter how outstanding the talents cultivated by them are, they still have to be returned to the 6 prefectures and used by them. If that's the case, then what's there to compete for? There's no need at all. Tomorrow's third event can be considered strange. Zhou Danjin couldn't help but ridicule, using spiritual sense to control birds. Isn't it still a competition of spiritual sense? I don't know what these people are up to, but I feel that the competition won't be so simple. The little fatty grumbled. Mata nodded in agreement. Instructor, have you thought of a good plan for tomorrow's competition? The instructors looked at each other. Zhou Danjin coughed and said, believe in yourselves. Tomorrow's bird-catching competition will most likely be a group activity. Just do your best. It was as if he didn't say anything. The students all looked at Instructor Zhou and the others with disdain, snorted, and waved their small hands. Sleep. They were too lazy to chat with these unreliable instructors. Ah, are you all here to stay? I'm sorry, but the store is already full. The 3rd floor of the store has already been. There are so many people. The shopkeeper's voice sounded. A purple figure opened the curtains and walked in with a swish sound, followed by a large group of girls dressed in red clothes. For a moment, everyone's eyes were dazzled by the fluttering of red. Arbor rubbed her eyes. She was about to go back to her room. Yet who would have expected that the purple-clothed woman would walk in first, and the two people's eyes met. The teacup in Xiao Mu's hand rolled onto the table with a gurgle, and the tea trickled down the edge of the table, dripping onto the hem of Crown Prince Mo's and young Sir Xiao's clothes. When everyone saw her lose her composure, they couldn't help but look at the door strangely, asked the second martial aunt. This was too unexpected. Didn't senior sister Yugue say that she would only bring her back to the sect after the competition? Chapter 2025. Yugue and the rest stood on the side and smiled helplessly. They had known that Lord Master was so energetic. As expected, young Shirong had traveled day and night here just 2 days after the news reached her. Second Aunt Master. Miss Chow small hand pressed against young Shirong's face, which was slightly cold from the night. She pursed her lips and felt her eyes sting. My Jojo, your face is so skinny. You must have suffered a lot these years. Young Shirong was about to cry as she hugged the little fellow in her arms. Arbor was instantly speechless. Why did everyone say she was skinny when they saw her? Her small face clearly still had a lot of meat. Little junior sister. Nearly 200 holy water sect disciples rushed in from outside, practically filling up the entire hall. The other guests were also speechless when they saw this. They hastily slipped away toward the stairs, not daring to stay here for a moment longer. Senior sister Yugue. The little fellow turned to look at her. Yugue patted her head with a smile and said, "Of course I have to report such a big matter to Master. I also thought that Master would definitely be impatient to personally come. So be it." Little junior sister's arrival was so delightful, so they were all very happy. Andy wiped her tears on the side and nodded repeatedly. Little Jojo has become a big girl. If Asun and the sect master are watching from the heavens, they will definitely be smiling in the underworld. Andy, we're happy today, so let's not talk about this. Several holy water sect disciples held back their tears and turned around to hug the aunt's shoulders with a smile. At this time, Mo Lien and He Chen's group had long been squeezed out of Jojo's side. Looking at such a large group of maternal family members, He Chen winked at Mo Lien with a spurious smile. TSK, Prince Mo's future path won't be easy. I see that Jojo has quite a lot of relatives. If every one of them wants to test Prince Mo, TSK, it won't be easy, it won't be easy. Stop rejoicing in my misfortune. Mo Lien fiercely glared at him. She originally wanted to walk closer, but she was squeezed out by several excited holy water sect disciples. Wife. Crown Prince Lien extended his paw and looked pitifully at his wife, who was surrounded by the crowd. Originally, he could have carried his wife upstairs to sleep. At this moment, so many holy water sect disciples had jumped out of nowhere. Fine. Today, Xiao would definitely reminisce with them until daybreak. Qi Xianxian scratched her head and hurriedly walked out with Ma Ta and the rest, giving the holy water sect sisters a place to stand. They were so happy to see Jojo that their eyes seemed to be burning with fire. This kind of strong feeling was probably not something that could be formed overnight. Second martial aunt, you've also lost a lot of weight. Arbor's small hand pressed against her cold cheek and sighed softly. She still remembered the first time she saw second martial aunt. She was still at the sex entrance test. It was already night at that time, and second martial aunt was wearing a purple robe with several eye-catching purple bamboo pieces embroidered on the hem of her skirt. She walked over with a grin and looked like she was in her prime, much plumper than she was now. They finally met again after many years of separation. Second Martial Ant's eyes were filled with the vicissitudes of life. Her pair of eyes that originally loved to smile had also restrained their smile and added a bit of steadiness. Second Martial Ant was no longer that slow-witted Second Martial Ant who was chased around the mountain by Murong Sun. Chapter 2026. But that was to be expected. Who didn't change after experiencing that incident? My Jojo. Young Shirong hugged her little martial niece and was just short of bawling her eyes out. At this moment, all the worries, uneasiness, and discomfort in her heart transformed into tenderness and faint joy. She stroked her little head and said softly, "And Master has no more regrets in this life to be able to see you again. Even if I go to the Yellow Springs right now, I'll still have the face to see Master and senior sister." Second Aunt Master, what nonsense are you saying? Arbor grabbed her hair and said in displeasure, "All of you will be safe and sound in the future. Nothing will happen to you." Young Shirong smiled and nodded. Okay. Everyone moved upstairs. Even though they were about to fill up a large room, they still couldn't fit 200 people inside. Arbor's eyes flickered, and he looked up at Qi Xianxian and the others, who were squeezed outside. He coughed lightly and said, "How about we change locations to talk?" Young Shirong was startled. Change where? This room couldn't fit 200 holy water sect disciples. Arbor looked up and shouted at Mo Lien, who was outside the door, "Hubby, can you set up a defensive boundary on this third floor? The kind that won't allow any idle people to enter." Okay. Mo Lien immediately knew what Jojo wanted to do, so she naturally agreed. She raised her hand and glanced at Ma Shiqin and little Tai Sui. Help reinforce it. Ma Shiqin also understood. Little Tai Sui was startled. Although it didn't understand, its hands moved. The three people worked together to lay down 3 defensive boundaries. In reality, no one in this inn could break through the defensive boundaries that Mo Lien laid down. However, this matter was of great importance, so for safety's sake, Prince Mo still held back. He had Ma Shiqin and little Tai Sui reinforce his defensive boundaries twice. In this way, even mosquitoes and flies couldn't fly in. If someone wanted to forcefully break through, it could be said that they were courting death. On the other side, Second Martial Ant Yang Shirong felt as if a huge rock had fallen from the sky and pressed down on her head. Her pretty face was as black as the bottom of a pot, and her entire person was petrified. Husband. What kind of title was that? That was too much. This brat actually tricked her Jojo into calling him husband after not seeing him for a few years. Young Shirong's face stiffened. To be more precise, all of the Holy Water sect disciples' faces turned stiff except for Yu Gui's group. Mo Kingdom's crown prince, you've gone too far. Young Shirong harumphed coldly, don't think that you can trick my Jojo just because she's young. In the past, our Jojo didn't have any sisters by his side to help him. That's why he was so easily deceived by you. But now... With her martial uncle here, don't even think about tricking her into using those nonsensical nicknames. Ma Shiqin stifled her laughter, looking like she was waiting to watch a good show. Prince Mo expressionlessly walked up from the parted crowd and respectfully bowed to Yang Shirong. Second Martial Ant, Jojo and I are already married. What? Everyone was in an uproar. Pairs of eyes blazed as they stared at the man before them. Yes. This fellow was indeed quite good-looking and had a magnificent appearance. However, this did not mean that he could casually abduct her family's Chow Chow. Young Shirong hastily shielded the little fellow and retreated a step. Jojo, good-looking men are most likely liars. Chapter 2027. You'll never go wrong if you listen to your martial uncle. We're not like those poor girls who have to get married early because of family circumstances. Young Shirong harumphed, we can't get married so early. Mo Kingdom's crown prince, don't think that just because our family's Jojo doesn't have any elders by her side, you can just go through the wedding ceremony and settle the marriage so easily. Arbor blinked and tugged on her second martial uncle's sleeve. Prince Mo pursed his lips and said with a serious expression, second martial uncle, Jojo, and I got married in a grand ceremony with the blessings of our parents. Jojo's name is already in our Mo family's genealogy. In other words, can you stop adding to the mess? What? Young Shirong was even more furious and shook her head, I don't believe you. How could Jojo's parents be so foolish? Jojo's still so young, why would they be in such a hurry to marry her off? You must have done something. Young Shirong's ability to hit the nail on the head. Prince Mo's handsome face darkened. Jojo, tell your martial uncle, how did you get married to him? My husband said. Mo Lian floated to Jojo's side in a flash and pulled her little body from Yang Shirong's embrace. Jojo, there's no need to tell second martial uncle everything that's said between us husband and wife. What kind of joke was this? If Yang Shirong knew that he had coaxed the little fellow into agreeing to his royal father's betrothal, second martial uncle would explode like a firecracker. Jojo was such an honest child that she would say whatever she wanted to say. If second martial uncle asked, she would definitely spill everything. Xiao Mu blinked and obediently nodded her head. Young Shirong watched from the side and was so angry that smoke was rising from her head. Mo Kingdom's crown prince. Second martial uncle. You can just call me Little Mo your balls. Young Shirong angrily pulled Arbor to her side and said earnestly, Jojo, you're still young. Don't be fooled by others. Tell me honestly, was this marriage arranged by the old great king of the Mo Kingdom? Arbor's eyes lit up, and he was about to nod. Mo Lian hurriedly pulled her to her side and reminded her, Jojo, you said that you wanted to talk somewhere else. Look, it's so crowded here. One room can't even fit so many people. Indeed, quite a few senior sisters were standing on the bed. Xian. Hongwen. Over here, outside. Qi Xuanchuan's voice came through the crowd. Arbor's eyes flickered. He coughed and said, I'll take you to a place. Ah. Where is it? For a moment, no one knew where she was going, so they all looked at her curiously. Arbor exchanged a few words with the water baby. A wisp of nimble mist emerged from her body and instantly engulfed everyone's bodies. In an instant, everyone felt as if the scenery in front of them had changed, and an earth-shattering change appeared in front of them. If it weren't for the fact that they were stepping on soft green grass and smelling the fragrance of plants, they would have thought that they were still dreaming. Holy shit, this. Is this the land of inheritance, the heavenly abode? Wow! There are so many big peaches. Qi Xuanchuan's ghostly voice came from afar, calling back the souls of Yang Shirong and the others who were still in a daze. Everyone trembled and stared at the scene in front of them in shock. Chapter 2028. The little fatty pinched Maude's cheeks several times. Does it hurt? Does it hurt you? Fuck. Let me pinch and see if it hurts. Maude recovered from his shock and pinched back with his hand. Duanmu, I'm not freaking dreaming, right? Zhou Danjin secretly pinched his thigh before widening his eyes. This student was going to ascend to heaven. Everyone finally came back to their senses with great difficulty and once again sank into the terrifying news of Miss Qiao holding a mystic realm. Wow! There's so much good food here. Everyone. This freaking spoilsport child. Everyone was originally still reveling in the scenery, but after Chi Xuanxuan's hollering, all the mood was gone. Young Shirong turned to look at Arbor in a daze. My Jojo, is what you see real? It's real. Arbor nodded and pulled young Shirong's hand up to a peach tree in front of them. Second Ant Master, can you feel its life aura? I can feel it. Young Shirong was both excited and rueful, but she was even more filled with joy. She hugged the child and patted her back hard. You child, Ant Master was worried about you all the time. I didn't expect. With this mystic realm in hand, what did Jojo have to fear? Even if they encountered a powerful enemy, they would at least have a place to hide. Her Xiao Qiao had such a great opportunity, so it was no wonder her cultivation soared so rapidly. Why did she have to go to Brinseed Island to find the ghost spirit realm? Her little Jojo's grotto heaven immortal abode was a pure, natural spirit realm. Second Ant Master, let me bring you all to a place, okay? Okay. Young Shirong nodded repeatedly, tears of joy welling up in her eyes. Her Jojo was blessed with great fortune and was a child with great fortune. If Master learned of this in the netherworld, she would definitely laugh heartily. Follow me. Arbor pulled young Shirong's hand, and with a thought, he brought all the senior sisters of the Holy Water sect to the peach blossom-filled peach blossom slope. Facing the peach blossom forest, the peach blossom slope was surrounded by a circle of green water that gurgled and flowed. The slope was covered with flowers and green grass, giving off a pleasant fragrance. A lonely grave, a coffin sealed in ice. When the disciples saw this, they couldn't help but burst into tears. Suppressing their sobs, they rushed forward and knelt in front of the grave. Hu Shichen glanced at the crown prince in confusion. She saw him standing far away under a peach tree, his eyes filled with reluctance as he looked at Xiao Qiao's frail back. At this moment, Mo Lian was extremely worried. He recalled that more than 3 years ago, this little fellow had picked up the bones of her martial uncles and senior sisters one by one. He wondered how much time she had spent to create this lonely grave with her own hands. It was as if a small figure had appeared in front of his eyes, piling dirt in front of the grave, staring blankly, silently weeping, kowtowing, and crying bitterly. His heart ached unbearably. Bang! The sound of a wine jar shattering caused Mo Lian to recover from her chaotic emotions. When she looked up, she saw young Shirong holding a large bowl of wine and raising her cup in unison with the 200 Holy Water sect disciples. The belated memorial ceremony was currently being carried out in a solemn and silent atmosphere. Everyone tilted their heads back and downed their cups in one gulp. Then, they heard Arbor say softly, "Let's get drunk today and set sail tomorrow. We won't let down the sect and severely damage the future. We will definitely comfort your souls in heaven with a myriad of glory. I'm here, the sect is here." Chapter 2029. At this moment, Qi Xianxian and the rest were infected by this strong camaraderie. They stared deeply at this scene and were unable to speak for a long time. On the slope of Paradise Garden, the Holy Water sect disciples reunited after a long time and got drunk. It was as if they had returned to the night of the fireworks. The next day, after Arbor woke up, he treated everyone to a sumptuous breakfast at Paradise Garden. Then, he changed his mind and led everyone to Fish Orchid Planet. Wow, Jojo, so you really threw the Crimson Firmament Ocean boat into the sea. Qi Xuanxuan's mouth was slightly agape as she exclaimed in amazement. She faced the sea and fixed her eyes on the Crimson Firmament Ocean boat docked by the shore. Right now, she really felt that her Jojo wasn't human anymore, at which normal person's Dantian could form a star domain of its own. According to Jojo, this sea area wasn't even the largest star in her star domain. She simply didn't dare to imagine how grand it would be if she could release all the stars in her star domain one day. You're saying that cultivating here for a day is only 2 hours in the outside world. Instructor Wei Wei suddenly raised his voice and asked. Meanwhile, Zhou Danjin stared at Arbor resentfully and said, no wonder those students from the other academies had to look down on you during the competition. Look at you, child. You have such a good resource, but you don't know how to use it. If you use it well, you'll grow by leaps and bounds. You actually follow Duanmuqi, Xian, and the rest around all day and don't think about improving yourself. Don't cultivate properly. Chirp 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 chirp. Arbor cast a glance at Instructor Zhou. Duanmuqing, who was innocently implicated, was expressionless. Qi Xian was puzzled. What did she do? Why did the instructor have to bring her along every time he lectured Jojo? Tell me. How did you waste such a good time like this? How good would it have been if we had slept on the beach last night? Zhou Danjin continued to nag. It should be daybreak outside now, right? If we had slept here last night, we could have saved more time to absorb spirit energy, right? You want to improve your cultivation, right? Arbor pointed the back of his head at Instructor Zhou. Teacher, don't be so agitated, don't be so agitated. Fatty quickly stepped forward and said, it's not too late now. I'll go out later to see what time it is. If we have enough time, let's stay here and cultivate for a while. This is the attitude of learning. Zhou Danjin had an expression that said, little Fatty, you're worth teaching. He nodded and said to the others, you can practice here for at least half a day. In other words, it was only an hour in the outside world. Everyone must seize this opportunity. The nagging instructor Zhou realized that after he finished speaking, the students had all moved to the red Nimbus blue wave ship. Let's go out to sea. Qi Xian laughed heartily and waved at the teachers who were standing on the beach with speechless expressions. Teachers, all of you should cultivate well. When we're done, we'll come back to pick you guys up. Bastards. Sigh, without Instructor Zhou's nagging beside my ear, I'm really not used to it. Fatty spread out his hands, expressing his helplessness. Everyone stared at Fatty as if they were looking at an idiot. Qi Xian cheered and ran to the deck. I'll go and enjoy the sea breeze. Chapter 2030. Duanmuqing and the rest couldn't help but helplessly watch her dash out. Then let's also go get some fresh air. A saint artifact was indeed a saint artifact. Not to mention 200 people, even if there were 20,000 or 20,000, it would still be able to hold them all. After all, this was an item that could be big or small. Arbor still didn't know how many people this ship could hold. He had never tried it before, right? That everyone sat down leisurely at the bow of the ship and chatted idly. Although they said they were chatting, most of the time, it was the others who were blindly chatting while Miss Chow listened expressionlessly. If you asked her something, she would only answer if she was willing to. If she wasn't, she would pretend that this darling doesn't understand and say, oh, or ah, and immediately kill the conversation. Everyone was also accustomed to this. They felt an indescribable sense of contentment in their hearts as they swam on the boundless ocean on this warm day. Jojo. Young Shirong said to her with a grin, how about letting your senior sisters cultivate on Fish Orchid Planet for a while? A portion of the Holy Water sect disciples hadn't broken through to the spiritual realm even after coming to Polan Manor for 3 years due to their innate aptitudes. This made Yang Shirong quite anxious. After all, the Holy Water sect's disciples' cultivation greatly affected the Holy Water sect's future development. When Arbor heard this, he nodded and said, and Master, I also wanted to talk to you about this. How about you go out after finding a treasured land with good feng shui to establish a sect? Until then, you should cultivate well in this spirit realm. That's great. Young Shirong nodded with gratification. 2 hours on Fish Orchid Planet was equivalent to a day in the outside world. Such a natural cultivation environment would definitely allow the Holy Water sect disciples to benefit greatly and improve their cultivation. Most importantly, her Qiao Qiao had even considered the location of the sect. She was truly a considerate and good child. Young Shirong patted Arbor's small head. When she saw the Crown Prince walking over from the corner of her eye, she immediately put on a disdainful expression and glared at him covetously. Stinking brat, what are you doing here? Pitiful Lien. The little fellow glanced at him sympathetically. That look in his eyes seemed to indicate that he wanted to watch a good show but was unable to help. Mo Lien was amused and angry at the same time. She really wanted to grab her and give her a good beating. Let's see if she could still watch her husband's antics. However, with young Shirong and the group of Holy Water sect girls eyeing him covetously, Prince Mo expressed that if he wanted to have a good life, he still had to build a good relationship with Jojo's maiden family. Martial Aunt, Arbor gently tugged on young Shirong's sleeve. My husband is very good to me. Young Shirong snorted and curled her lips. If he doesn't treat you well, I'll break his legs. Pfft, the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal wanted to laugh but Prince Mo glared at him. Jojo. Mo Lien blinked at her, feeling wronged. The little fellow reflexively wanted to go to his side. Young Shirong reached out to stop her and pulled Arbor towards the railing. Jojo, accompany Martial Aunt to fish. How about we eat a fish feast at noon? Arbor expressed that it didn't matter what they ate. She only turned around to look at the black-faced Prince Mo sympathetically and waved her small paw at him. Hubby. Work hard. Infiltrate our Holy Water sect like how you infiltrated my family. Mo Lien didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she looked at her, a smile on her lips. His Jojo was in such a good mood today. Chapter 2031. If his Jojo was in such a good mood every day, then he would be at ease. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal turned to look at Mo Lien. Cough, what's going on with the Holy Water sect? The Crown Prince glanced at him. Would I tell you about Jojo? Stop fucking dreaming. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal was a bit angry and glanced at him. Petty. He was petty. Would he go around telling others about his wife's matters? She even said it to the person who might become her invisible love rival. Ha ha. You can know if you want to. You have to tell me what exactly were the 3 trials of money, power, and lust that you passed in the illusory matrix of the punishment realm. Mo Lien glanced at He Shurchin. In your dreams. Of course, He Shurchin wouldn't tell this fellow what he encountered in the illusory matrix. If he said it, he said it. He Shurchin harumphed and turned to leave in a huff. Standing behind him, Crown Prince Mo gazed indifferently at that person, his lips curling up slightly. He Shurchin, ah, He Shurchin. Could it be that he experienced the same illusory dream as him? Arbor's group sailed on the sea for a while and only went out together when they felt that it was about time. Young Shirong and the rest naturally had to go out as well. After all, many of the guests saw their group of 200 travel-worn people last night in finding Jojo at the inn. If they didn't come down from upstairs early in the morning and directly disappeared, then it would be too strange in everyone's eyes. Thump, 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 thump. With a series of footsteps on the stairs, the people in the lobby winked and looked towards the stairs. Their eyes nearly popped out of their sockets when they saw it. Fuck, where did so many beautiful, refined, and alluring girls come from? Their auras were all so fresh and refined. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they were celestial fairies that descended to the mortal world. Young Shirong coldly swept her gaze across the lobby and the men who were staring at the Holy Water sex girls until they were transfixed. Qi Xianxian ran down the stairs and shouted, "Shopkeeper! Give me 2 pots of hot porridge." "Ah, okay. Miss, there are so many of you. Are 2 pots of porridge enough for everyone?" It's enough, it's enough. Just come up." Qi Xianxian waved her hand and called out. What a joke. They were just pretending to ask for 2 pots of porridge. Just now, they had already eaten a delicious breakfast on Paradise Planet. They were not hungry at all. "Waiter, do you have a vacant room?" An arrogant female voice came from outside the inn. The leader of the group of people who followed them in was tall and slender. She wore a pink robe that exposed half of her shoulders. She was only wearing a thin pink gauze robe. This woman's body looked very graceful and voluptuous. As soon as she walked in, the gazes of the many men in the hall shifted unblinkingly to her body, and they swallowed their saliva with all their might. The woman didn't feel offended. Instead, she was very happy to attract the attention of all the men present. She chuckled and gently scattered the handkerchief in her hand. Like a happy butterfly, the thin and soft silk handkerchief brushed past the noses of the men. The few of them revealed a bewildered expression as they took a deep breath and exhaled. What are they doing? The little stoic's cold question instantly caused everyone present to twitch their mouths. It's here, it's here, it's here again. The Holy Water sect disciples who were familiar with their little junior sister's style all suffered internal injuries from stifling their laughter. This child was born to be a killjoy. Chapter 2032. The woman angrily glared at her, but with this glance, she instantly completely ignored the little stoic's icy face. There were only a few stunningly beautiful men in her line of sight that the little stoic suddenly stretched out 2 fingers. Young Shirong, who was standing next to her, clearly twitched her mouth. As expected, she saw her little niece use 2 fingers to indicate the distance of her line of sight. Then, she asked in puzzlement, "Why isn't she looking at me?" Qi Xianxian really couldn't hold it in and laughed out loud. Why the heck did she feel that Jojo's words and actions were so frightening? Arbor was baffled. She was clearly the one who asked the question. This woman clearly wanted to glare at her, but when she looked away, her gaze would wander off to who knew where. The little fellow lifted her head, and her gaze suddenly turned angry. She subconsciously shifted to stand in front of Mo Lien. "Who allowed you to look at my husband? I'll dig your eyeballs out if you keep looking." "Everyone. Jojo, this female pervert is also looking at me." Ma Shichen aggrievedly tugged at her sleeve, which earned her a disdainful glare from Prince Mo. This punk was pretending to be young in front of his wife again. Arbor took another step to the side and blocked in front of Ma Shichen. He glared at the woman and said, "What are you looking at?" "Everyone. Actually, you can't block them, okay? Your height can't even cover 2 men's faces." Young Shirong's eyebrows twitched inexplicably. "Jojo. Aunt Master." Arbor turned to look at her and said in displeasure, "We're not eating porridge anymore. Let's go." She didn't like letting other people see her lotus. In any case, everyone was full from eating, so they honestly couldn't rouse any interest in that plain porridge. Upon hearing her words, everyone immediately went along with it and nodded repeatedly. "Let's go. We have to hurry over. Maybe people from the other academies have already arrived at this time," the little fatty said with a smile. Emichem. Let's go. Today is the last competition, so we must strive to get 3rd place. Why is your goal so low? Lu Yu is right. Don't bite off more than you can chew. If we can get 3rd place in today's project, I feel that we still have a chance to go to Brinset Island. Stop. The woman, who was completely ignored by everyone, suddenly screamed at the back view of everyone leaving. She took a big step forward and blocked the door. I'm so angry. Were these people blind? None of them seemed to be able to see her existence. He actually wanted to bypass her and go out. Ah! You, aren't you that noble and virtuous young sir? A voice interrupted the woman's shriek. A person popped out from behind that woman and quickly walked up to Xiao Mu. Suddenly, she reached out and tightly grasped Xiao Mu's hand. She shook it vigorously and said with bright eyes, "Benefactor, I'm truly too happy to be able to meet you here. How about I be the host today?" Arbor looked at the woman in front of him blankly. He completely couldn't remember when he met this person. Qi Xianxian couldn't help but twitch her mouth. She walked to Arbor's side and said, "We met at the Lava Mountains, Fairy Yellow Crane." Yes. Fairy Yellow Crane said excitedly, "You can call me Little Yellow Crane." Little Yellow Crane. Everyone silently looked at each other, and for a moment, they felt somewhat speechless. Sleep. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Chapter 2033. Little Yellow Crane. Arbor silently glanced at Qi Xianxian and used his eyes to ask her, "Who?" She completely didn't remember anyone else. Qi Xianxian helplessly rubbed her forehead and coughed lightly. "It's that day when our team was besieged by a herd of beasts while training in the Lava Mountain Range." Right. Benefactor of noble character and unquestionable integrity. Fairy Yellow Crane tightly grasped Arbor's hands and said gratefully, "If Benefactor hadn't left with the herd of beasts that day, all of us would have suffered a calamity." Everyone. Why the heck did they find it so strange? Although many people didn't know the truth, based on their understanding of little junior sister, Miss Xiao, this absolutely wasn't Xiao's style. Arbor was expressionless and reflexively pulled her small hand away. Fairy Yellow Crane tightly grasped it and said rather agitatedly, "Benefactor, don't decline any more this time. Let me be the host and treat everyone to a meal to thank Benefactor properly." Everyone, "Thank you, we're already very full." Qi Xianxian hastily pulled back Miss Xiao's small hand and chuckled awkwardly at Fairy Yellow Crane. "No need to be so courteous, Fairy. You're Benefactor's friend, right? Just call me Little Yellow Crane. We don't need to be so formal." Little Yellow Crane. Qi Xianxian coughed helplessly. "Emichim, Little Yellow Crane, we still have to rush to Xinghua Martial Arts Arena for the competition. How about?" "Ah. Benefactor is going to Xinghua Martial Arts Arena for the competition. Then I must go and take a look." Fairy Yellow Crane clenched her fists and immediately said, "Benefactor's skills are exceptional. She'll definitely win the competition and take first place. Where did you get such confidence in JoJo?" The mentors glanced at her speechlessly. Yellow Crane. Fairy Lingfei in pink couldn't bear it anymore and shouted angrily, "Why are you chirping with them? Could this dunce differentiate between friend and foe? Didn't she see that she wanted to diss that little stoic? What was the meaning of this crazy woman suddenly interfering? Huang He. Senior Sister Lingfei, why are you yelling at me like that?" Fairy Yellow Crane turned her head and looked blankly at the red-faced Fairy Lingfei who was glaring at her. Fairy Lingfei was so angry that she almost couldn't vent her anger. How could this brainless Huang He be her junior sister? "Get over here!" Lingfei roared. Fairy Huang He hastily leaned towards the little stoic and shook her head, saying, "I'm not going over. Senior Sister Lingfei, you stay in the inn first. I plan to go to the Xinghua Martial Arts Arena with my Benefactor to watch his match and cheer him on." "Go shit yourself." Fairy Lingfei's pretty face flushed red with anger. She ground her teeth and said angrily, "Huang He, don't tell me you've forgotten what Master said when we came out." Fairy Yellow Crane looked at her with a troubled expression. Master told me to listen to you, but this is my private matter. Why you can't interfere? The reason why little Yellow Crane's voice turned softer was because it realized that its senior sister's gaze was as though she wanted to devour someone. Get your ass over here right now. Arbor raised his hand, and a strong gust of wind swept past Fairy Lingfei's temples in an instant. Greatly alarmed, Fairy Lingfei did a backflip and landed on a square dining table in the main hall with a whoosh. Bang! The dining table under his feet suddenly exploded. Chapter 2034. Fairy Lingfei shifted once more. Just as she was about to land on the ground, she felt a gust of mist suddenly engulfing her in it. Bam! Fairy Lingfei discovered in astonishment that she had been sent flying by this mist. She tumbled down the stairs in a very sorry state, and her waist almost hung from the handrail. This was an extraordinary humiliation. Fairy Lingfei's eyes burned with a fiery red of fury. Too furious. She didn't expect that this stoic face would directly send her flying without even saying a word before making a move. Fairy Huanghe's mouth also gaped slightly, and she almost clapped and cheered. But when she saw her senior sister's humiliated expression, she hastily shut her mouth in embarrassment, not daring to speak. As expected, her benefactor was skilled. Fairy Huanghe secretly praised in her heart. You! Long-winded. Arbor coldly swept a glance at the ashen-faced Fairy Lingfei before turning to walk out of the inn. Long-winded. Long-winded. Everyone chimed in at once, throwing the ashen-faced Fairy Lingfei the same sentence before following the little stoic out. When Fairy Huanghe saw this, how would she dare to rub her senior sister the wrong way? She hastily followed after them like a wisp of smoke. Fairy Lingfei was so angry that her silver teeth were about to break from gritting them. She shouted furiously behind Huanghe, Huanghe! Come back here! Huanghe! You deserve to die. Don't come back once you step out of this door. Fairy Huanghe shuddered. Qi Xianxian glanced at her from the corner of her eyes. Is there something wrong with your senior sister? Is there something wrong with her brain? Fairy Huanghe hastily shook her head and said, although my senior sister Lingfei's temper is a bit irritable, she wasn't like this before. Don't take offense, I'll properly persuade her later. TSK, the little fatty couldn't help but scoff. She already chased you out of the door. She said earlier that she wouldn't let you go back if you stepped out of this inn. Are you an idiot? It shouldn't be like this, right? Fairy Huanghe forced a bitter expression and shook her head. My senior sister is merely in a fit of anger right now. After a while, I think it should be like this, cough, all right. Ha! Everyone couldn't help but throw her 2 words. Just look at Fairy Lingfei's murderous look just now. Would she be fine after being angry? Fairy Yellow Crane's disobedience would only make her even angrier, causing her to fall into a violent rage. But it didn't matter. Everyone only saw a mad dog barking at them. In the blink of an eye, they forgot about Fairy Lingfei. Everyone familiarly entered the Xinghua martial arts arena. This time, it was as if they had arrived on time. As soon as they entered, the mighty group of people attracted the attention of the crowd. Fuck, where did this top academy get so many pretty girls to be their backup? This is too exaggerated. This lineup. Could it be that the top academies have already won? Instructor Zhou and the others happily came to the seating area. As soon as they sat down, they heard a lot of discussion. Naturally, everyone turned a blind eye to it. Their gazes swept around indifferently and landed on the students on the stage. As soon as Arbor and the others entered the stage, they attracted a lot of attention. Li Nanshan was the leader, standing on the stage. Seeing her walk over, she nodded at her in a friendly manner. Arbor returned the greeting. The CEO judge, Hong Chi, walked up to the crowd of people who were paying attention to him and said with a smile, "Are you ready?" Chapter 2035. Since everyone is ready, then. Hong Chi suddenly smiled mysteriously at the crowd before he could finish his sentence. Elder Hong stretched out his hand and turned a ring on his finger. In an instant, everyone saw a light screen seeping out from the ring. Soon, a sealed light red transparent shield appeared in front of Old Hong. A simulated environment. Everyone was shocked, but they understood what was going on. Since it was said that they were going to catch birds, it probably wouldn't be that simple. Those who are ready can go in. Elder Hong gestured for everyone to go in. A disciple from the Qinguang Academy swallowed his saliva and walked in front of the light barrier hesitantly. Elder Hong smiled and said, "Everyone, please be careful. Although you know that everything in the testing environment is fake, I have to tell you something. But I have to tell you one thing. If you die or get injured in the test environment, you will suffer the same fate in real life." Everyone shuddered and shut their mouths tightly, waiting solemnly. The Qinguang Academy student raised his small hand weakly and asked, "Didn't we say that we were going to release all kinds of birds in the sky above the arena? Why do we have to go into the testing environment now?" The student's voice slowly weakened as he realized that his instructor was glaring at him. The meaning was obvious: hurry up and go. Stop being so arrogant. Go in and take advantage of the terrain. The Qinguang Academy student was hot-headed and stepped into the transparent barrier. Instantly, he felt that the scenery in front of him changed drastically. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A bunch of blood bats flew over, causing the woman to shriek in fright. Wasn't this asking them to catch birds? Why did a bunch of blood bats appear? Were these blood bats birds? No. The student was puzzled and hurriedly waved his hand to cut down a bat that was flying towards his face. Arbor, Qi Xianxian, and the others also entered the testing environment one after another. As soon as they entered, they realized that they were in a cave and their feet were submerged in ice-cold water. The worst thing was that a large group of bats came out of the cave and pounced on them. Everyone drew their swords and sabers and slashed at the bats that flew in front of them. In this short period of time, Ri Guang, Yusei, Xinghui, Qinguang, and the rest of the students from the Heavenly Bestowing Academy had also entered the testing environment. They could feel the malicious intent of this environment towards them. Bai Xia followed behind the captain of the Starlight Academy. With a look of disgust, she pulled out her left foot from the muddy water and whined, "What the hell is this place? Everyone, be careful." The captain of Starlight Academy reminded them with a stern expression. "Don't let these blood bats get close to you." Fuck. Are these bats done yet? Mata flicked his spear and pierced a blood bat that was pouncing over, turning it into minced meat. Duanmu Qing stood beside Arbor with his sword in hand. All the blood bats that pounced on them were dealt with by his sword aura from a few meters away. Miss Chiao stood in the middle of the crowd and looked around curiously. This was her second time experiencing this kind of testing environment. She didn't know how this kind of simulated environment was formed. It was said that only divine weapon masters could create spatial artifacts that could simulate environments like this. In that case, her Lien should be able to do it. Chapter 2036. While everyone was fighting fiercely, the little fellow's mind was wandering. She was thinking of asking Prince Mo to get her a ring that could release a simulated environment to play with. In the future, she would also send them into simulated environments to train whenever she felt like it. Bang! A blood bat that flew in front of Duanmu Qing was sent flying with a sweep of his hand. It turned into fine powder in midair. Jojo, Focus. Duanmuqing helplessly tugged at her sleeve. Only then did she regain her senses. Jojo, this blood. Tui, it's coming again. With a flying kick, Qi Xianxian kicked a blood bat to the ground. She raised her sword and cleanly chopped off the bat's head. Jojo, do you think these blood bats are the birds we're supposed to catch? I don't think so. Xiao Mu blinked. In her impression, weren't birds all colorful, small, exquisite, and very adorable? These blood bats were probably obstacles in the testing environment. Everyone, attack together. Don't just stand there empty-handed. Captain Dan from Yunchuan Prefecture's Frostgale Academy couldn't help but shout at a few people who hadn't made a move yet. Among them was a certain Miss Chiao, who was leisurely watching the show. A certain Miss Chiao glanced at Captain Dan from Frostgale Academy, then turned her head away. The other people from the other academies, on the other hand, moved after hearing Captain Dan's shout. The group of people engaged in a life-and-death battle with the blood bats that continuously surged out from the depths of the cave. Arbor followed beside Duanmuqing, Lu Yu, and a few other team members. Occasionally, she would move her fingers and throw out 2 or 3 thin needles. Occasionally, she would raise her arm and release a black gold arrow. Most of the time, she was observing from the sidelines. If everyone was using their spiritual power to fight the blood bats like dogs, this little girl probably didn't even use 1/10 of their spiritual power. Many blood bats piled up beside everyone's feet. Together with the ice-cold water, they formed a meandering river of blood. When everyone stepped on the blood bats, they felt as if they were mixed with the mud in the depths of the cave. It was very uncomfortable. Uncomfortable. Miss Chiao lifted her small feet and frowned as she looked at the mud on her shoes. Then, she rubbed her feet against the stone wall at the side. His body, which had originally wanted to leap up, was inexplicably pulled by gravity and could not rise into the air. Oh, this testing environment is also a gravity zone. As Xiao Mu pondered this expressionlessly, she followed Duanmuqing and the others into the depths of the cave, stumbling her way up and down. He hated this kind of dark and gloomy place the most. Arbor reached out and took out 2 luminous pearls from his inner world, one in his left hand and the other in his right. He asked impatiently, "When can we leave this place?" The group of people who were fighting the blood bats turned around to look at her. They were almost amused by her. It was bad enough that this little brat didn't kill the bats, but he even rubbed the mud on his shoes with a look of disgust. He lowered his head and skipped away while picking up the stones on his toes. "What are you doing? Why aren't they killing the bats?" A female disciple from the Celestial Light Academy couldn't help but feel anxious. They were all girls. How could this girl act like she was playing with the crowd and go with the flow? If she was happy, she would kill a few bats. If she was unhappy, she would not attack at all. On the other hand, she was fighting like a dog against a dozen blood bats that pounced on her. She couldn't help but cry out because of the huge difference in their mentality. Arbor looked up at the horde of blood bats. "Do I get points for killing them?" "Of course not." Chapter 2037. What kind of situation was this? She was still thinking about points. Was this girl an idiot? The female disciple from the Qinguang Academy looked at Arbor with deep disdain. Xiao Mu naturally glared back in irritation, and she leisurely shook her head at the female disciple. "Are you dumb? Since there are no points, what's the point of fighting?" "You." Everyone was amused by her words. "Fine, if you don't fight, can you pass through the bat swarm without fighting?" It was obvious that this path led to the end. If you want to go in and see the depths of the cave, you have to get rid of these blood bats. Arbor stuck a speed talisman, a Vajra talisman, and an invisibility talisman on each of his team members. The 8 people from the top academies instantly disappeared in front of everyone. After a moment, everyone could only see the few people from the top academies stomping on the ground. They passed through. They passed through so easily. Everyone couldn't help but be stunned. They wrung their hands and stared at Arbor's team, who had obviously entered the depths of the cave and were walking toward it. Damn it! Someone cursed in a low voice. Li Nanshan was the first to move. She killed a bloody path through the bat swarm and led the group from Jiqing Academy into the depths of the cave. Wait a moment. Arbor's cold voice rang out. Li Nanshan from Jiqing Academy and her team paused in their steps. However, a portion of the Qinguang Academy group didn't stop and continued to run forward a few meters. Suddenly, one of the male students from the Celestial Light Academy felt a slight pain on his cheek. Paw! He raised his hand and slapped his left cheek, killing a mosquito with a heavy slap. He cursed and was about to continue walking forward when he suddenly felt pain all over his body. Just like that, he inexplicably fell to the ground where the blood bats and sludge were mixed together. Ah! Everyone jumped in fright, thinking that he had been bitten by a blood bat. They hurriedly shouted, "Everyone, be careful. Do blood bats bite people? Come and take a look. What's wrong with this student?" The voice of the student who had fallen into the blood and mud had already quieted down by now. Everyone only saw a strange flame shoot out of his body and burn to its heart's content. In less than a quarter of an hour, the man was burned into a pile of ashes. Qi Xianxian gulped. Oh my God! Was he dead? Did he die after leaving? This guy has already been burned to ashes. He's definitely dead. Buzz, buzz, buzz. A series of subtle vibrations mixed in with the swarm of blood bats was heading towards them at an extremely strange speed. At this moment, the mentors who were watching the competition in the outside world were naturally in an uproar. Hong Chi-ting immediately stood up from his seat, his gaze fixed on a teacher from the heaven-bestowing academy with an indifferent expression. Instructor He, didn't you say that there would be no problems in this enclosed testing environment? Just now, a student had died right in front of them. Activate your defensive barriers. Duanmu Qing shouted sternly. Everyone felt a slight jolt in their hearts and involuntarily did as he said. In such a chaotic time, it was naturally a good thing to have such a pillar of support. Everyone's expression froze. Chapter 2038. This joke was a bit too much. Of course, in the past, a few of the students who fought for glory in the academy ranking competition might be sacrificed. However, the poisonous mosquitoes in the test environment were indiscriminate and large-scale terrorist attacks. If it was not handled well, it would wipe out all the outstanding students in the 6 prefectures academy. The Poland Manor instructor called Instructor He by Elder Hong smiled faintly. Don't be too nervous. This is also a way to filter out the strength of the students. Only after experiencing true life and death will the students grow, right? Grow your ass. Everyone couldn't help but curse in their hearts. Even the instructors from the other academies were casting disapproving glances at Instructor He. This is a bit too much, Instructor He. Sunlight Academy's Instructor Chao Dan glared at Instructor He unhappily and frowned quickly. Elder Hong, this concerns the safety of all the students. I hope you can open up the sealed testing environment and let everyone out. Hong Chi nodded. He had the same intention. Poland Manor's Instructor He smiled faintly and shook his head. Back then, you all agreed to enter the testing environment for the last test. Now you're suddenly turning against me and blaming me. No one is blaming you. Instructor He, it's just that the competition in the testing environment is a bit too dangerous. Those poisonous mosquitoes are. As he spoke, Instructor Chow Dan's expression changed slightly. He clearly saw that within the transparent cover, one of his students was stared at by a mosquito and fell heavily to the ground. It's over. Everyone's hearts tightened. He searched and looked at Prince Mo, who was sitting beside him. Could this be the legendary fiery demon poisonous mosquitoes? This was a bit exaggerated. How could a mere academy ranking competition involve the fiery demon poisonous mosquitoes that Underworld Regions Lee family specialized in? These things were rare. Only Underworld Regions Lee family specialized in rearing these little poisonous creatures. These fiery demon poisonous mosquitoes could be considered Underworld Regions Lee family's signature poisonous creature. Why would they appear in a ranking competition testing environment? Everyone saw Miss Chiao's figure suddenly appear, and a pill was shot into the mouth of the student on the ground. This fire poison was able to escape from the heart and lungs and start a fire from the inside of the body. It started to burn from the 5 viscera and 6 bowels all the way to the outside of the body. Such a miraculous thing was rare. If it were an ordinary person, they would naturally be stumped by this evil fire. But was Miss Chiao an ordinary person? Her medical skills had already reached the peak of perfection. A mere bit of demonic fire was naturally unable to do anything to her. But this Motzi looked rather exquisite. With great interest, Miss Chiao summoned a feral from her conscience and slapped one of the mosquitoes to death. Everyone was scared out of their wits. They hurriedly activated their defensive barriers, planning to swarm forward and kill all the fiery evil mosquitoes. However, with a wave of Chow Mu's hand, the black mist-like bundle of demonic fiery mosquitoes were all sucked into Paradise Planet's 100 Poisons Valley with a single thought. Sigh. Not bad, a group of little fellows can be of some use at a critical moment. Let them become good friends with her poison-tailed butterflies. The pitiful group of poisonous mosquitoes was currently being attacked by a large group of poison-tailed butterflies, ravaging them like a storm. Very quickly, the poison-tailed butterfly queen's little supreme status was established. Chapter 2039. Needless to say, this action made everyone, both inside and outside the shield, dumbfounded. The students from the Sunlight Academy cupped their fists at Arbor excitedly. Thank you for saving us again. Miss Chiao must have kept all the poison-tailed butterflies in the storage talisman. Yes, yes, yes. We can just destroy the storage talisman and get rid of these poisonous creatures once and for all. Ha ha ha. Miss Chiao is brilliant. Miss Chiao is mighty. The students from the Sunlight Academy made their own guesses and deductions before coming to the same conclusion. Afterwards, he actually started cheering for Chiao Mu obsequiously. Miss Chiao, keep them. Keep all the blood bats in the storage talisman. Thank you so much. Chiao Mu swept a glance at those hideous vampire bats before turning her small head away in disdain. Whoever liked them could keep them. She didn't want them. They were so ugly and had average attack power. They weren't as cute as mosquitoes. If a mosquito were caught off guard and stung, it could burn a person to ashes from the inside out. What could a blood bat do? They couldn't be eaten or fought. Keeping them was a waste of food. Seeing that she had no intention of keeping the blood bats, they could only continue forward with their sabers and kill the remaining blood bats. The path became a little smoother. The group panted heavily as they followed behind the energetic fellows from the top academies, rushing into the depths of the cave. The deeper they went, the wider their field of vision became. It was as if they had entered a gourd. In front of them was a thin opening. After walking for a while, they entered the belly of the fat gourd. Naturally, their field of vision opened up. Arbor didn't think too much. She removed the invisibility talismans on the students from the top academies and walked forward with them. To be honest, if the poisonous mosquitoes hadn't suddenly appeared, she would have led the students from the top academies into the depths of the cave. Seeing how pitiful those guys from the Sunlight Academy were, he couldn't help but lend them a hand. Humph. The Sunlight Academy student, who had just been bitten by a mosquito but had not started burning in his heart, hastily walked up and repeatedly thanked Xiao Mu. Everyone was in awe of Miss Xiao's medical skills. If they had thought that Starlight Academy's Master Zhou was exaggerating about Miss Xiao's medical skills, they would have slapped their own mouths. Soon, the group entered the depths of the cave. They were in a small room. This was a semi-enclosed place. When everyone moved into this small stone room, the stone door that connected to the outside fell down with a wah sound. One of the students from Frostgale Academy was shocked. He reflexively threw a punch at the stone door, but found that the stone door didn't even budge. Xiao Mu turned to look at that clown and couldn't resist rolling her eyes. Why are you knocking on the door? Are you stupid? This door, this stone room, everything here was just an illusion created by the testing environment. Only things that moved in the testing environment were real objects. If they wanted to break the door open, they had to break through this enclosed testing environment. Breaking the door was useless. At this moment, the student also understood. He raised his hand and touched the back of his head with a silly smile. I'm going to sleep. I'll go to the hospital tomorrow and come back at night. Chapter 2040. Ha! I forgot that student rubbed his head and chuckled at Arbor. Then, his expression tensed up. Miss Chiao, what should we do now? Everyone looked at him as if they were looking at an idiot. No matter how the environment changed, they were still in the simulated environment. If they wanted to leave, they had to rely on external forces to let them out or use their own abilities to break the spiritual weapon. For the latter, it was naturally filled with difficulties. A student from the Sunlight Academy suddenly pointed to the sky and shouted, "Look! Birds, so many birds!" Above the dome, a large group of colorful birds were making chirping noises at this time. Oh my, are these the birds we are supposed to catch? A student from the Celestial Light Academy was the first to jump up. Without saying a word, he stretched out his hand to grab the bird on the dome. A strong gravitational force swept towards him. That person tiptoed with his left foot and exerted force with his right foot. He jumped up half a meter and could barely touch the birds on the lowest layer with one hand. However, when his hand touched a blue bird, the bird exploded on the spot and turned his hand into a bloody mess. The student let out an anguished wail and immediately rolled down from the sky, smashing heavily onto the ground. He held onto a hand that had half of its bones exposed and let out a miserable howl. Wah! Everyone cried out in surprise. The Dawn Academy instructor who was watching from outside the transparent barrier jumped up and glared at Instructor He from the Heavenly Bestowing Academy of the Polan Prefecture. He pointed at him and said angrily, You. Back then, the most famous academies in the 6 prefectures continent, which were the top 10 academies, worked together to set the rules for this competition. Instructor He from the Polan Prefecture's Heavenly Bestowing Academy suggested that the students could complete the 3rd test in the simulated environment. However, from the beginning to the end, this instructor He had never mentioned that the simulated environment was so dangerous, nor had he told anyone in advance what kind of dangers there would be in the simulated environment. He only said that this spiritual weapon was made by an extremely famous divine weapon master and that the Polan Prefecture Academy had never used it. However, now it seemed that he was lying. Why didn't the students from the Polan Prefecture's Heavenly Bestowing Academy make any moves after entering the simulated environment? It was obvious that they knew about the danger beforehand. Shameless! The instructor from the Chengwang Academy, who was observing from the outside, was about to explode in anger. Within a short period of time, one of the students from the Celestial Light Academy had died and another was injured. The number of casualties was disastrous. How could the instructors of the Celestial Light Academy not be furious? As one of the top 10 academies in the 6 prefectures, why was it that the Poland Prefecture's Heavenly Bestowal Academy was able to foresee danger and avoid danger, while the others were like fools, being played around by the Heavenly Bestowal Academy? Instructor I advise you to release them immediately. The instructor from the Qinguang Academy shouted angrily. Unexpectedly, Instructor of the Heavenly Bestowing Academy shrugged with a relaxed expression and said, "Sorry, I forgot to tell you before." A faint mocking smile appeared on Instructor He's face. Once you enter this simulated environment, you won't be able to reopen the entrance with your own strength. Therefore, good luck to all of you. Instructor from the Heavenly Bestowing Academy looked at Arbor coldly. His lips curled into a smile. Chapter 2041. Shuntian Prefecture, Wuang Mountain. Qingtian Valley. A black shadow quietly landed among the flowers and trees, hiding under the corridor. The 2 people who were approaching from afar did not notice that someone was hiding there. They slowly walked along the corridor. Auntie, Jiao sent a message through the communication jade talisman, indicating that everything is going smoothly. A sinister voice came from the corridor. It sounded like an iron pestle hitting the ground. Dong, dong, dong. The sound kept coming. The person who was hiding didn't dare to look out. Especially when the voices of the 2 people in the corridor got closer, they let their breaths blend into the wind and couldn't move at all. Very good. A hoarse and old female voice sounded at the same time. It's a pity that we can't use that slut's body for experiments. I'm sure that there's a very deep secret buried in that slut's body. Cough, cough. Auntie. It's been 7 or 8 days, but your cough hasn't improved. Could it be that you're feeling unwell after absorbing that person's medicinal power? Chiu Auntie is fine. Fan Gu's old voice sounded again. She coughed a few times and said, after absorbing that person's medicinal power, it did increase the medicinal power in my body. However, the increase isn't fast. You still need to study how to make Auntie's medicinal power increase rapidly. Cough, cough, cough. In the future, you won't be unable to treat a small cold in your body. Yes, Auntie. Chiu will work hard. Fan Gu smiled proudly. After dealing with that trouble, I'll have the face to beg Master to give us a good future. Dong, dong, dong. The sound of the iron pestle, accompanied by Fan Gu's hoarse laughter, slowly faded away. A black-clothed young man who was hiding among the flowers stood up and glanced indifferently at the backs of the 2 people. The middle-aged woman was wearing a black veil, and she walked very slowly. The man beside her looked very old and unshaven. Coupled with the fact that there was nothing under his left trouser leg and he was holding an iron rod in his hand, he looked even more like he had experienced the vicissitudes of life. The 2 of them were Aunt Fan and her niece whom Arbor wanted dead. Ever since they parted ways at Jiaozhong Base on Sikong Star, Fan Chioha had lost his left leg. He had always hated Arbor to the bone and had done everything possible to get rid of him. Unfortunately, ever since the aunt and niece realized that Arbor had ascended to the 6 prefectures continent, they had sent out several batches of people, but none of them had been able to leave Arbor as they wished. Starting from Tan Fa, they had all ended in failure. Until this time, He Jiao, a disciple of the Clear Sky sect who was hiding in the Heavenly Bestowing Academy of Poland Mansion, brought them good news. After seeing the aunt and niece leave along the corridor, the black-clothed man disappeared among the flowers in a flash. His lord had asked him to bring people to keep an eye on the Clear Sky sect's people. They didn't need to do anything. They just needed to surround them from a distance. As for other matters, there was no need for them to worry too much. At this moment, Instructor He of Poland Mansion's Heavenly Bestowing Academy suddenly threw out an item on the ground. Thick smoke immediately engulfed his entire body. He Jiao. The instructors of the Celestial Light Academy couldn't help but shout angrily. What was wrong with this guy? Could it be that he had contributed this spirit tool just to kill so many elite students of the various academies? Although Elder Hong's movements were fast, by the time he flashed in front of He Jiao, the seating area had already been shrouded in thick smoke, blurring his vision. Chapter 2042. Ah! He Jiao let out a pitiful scream. Before he could figure out what was going on, he had already been swept away by a strong gust of cold wind, falling heavily to the ground. He did not run away. Everyone stared dumbfoundedly at the man who had fallen out of the smoke, his face almost deformed from the fall. A black shadow flashed and the cold light of the dark moon sword was already pointed at He Jiao's throat. If it was just a hair's breadth away, it would have taken his life. He Jiao's entire body stiffened, not daring to move in the slightest. The aura of the person in front of him was too strong. He did not dare to move. He was afraid that if he moved, the next step would be the sword in his hand that would take his dog life. Your Excellency. I don't know, what is the meaning of this? Pang! A fist wind came from the side, landing heavily on He Jiao's face. He immediately let out a pitiful scream, rolling on the ground like a salted fish. In an instant, his stomach was stepped on by someone's foot, heavily pressing him to the ground. The upper half of his body that had wanted to straighten up, was once again stepped on by someone. Yo, you casually created some smoke to fool the eyes and you think you can escape from my boss's hands. Dao Wuji stepped on the Heavenly Bestowing Academy's teacher He, a smiling expression on his face. Do you think everyone is as stupid as you? Dao Wuji used the back of his sword to lightly pat He Jiao's cheek. He Jiao did not escape. At this time, he was lying on the ground trembling. His eyes were filled with fear, almost popping out of their sockets. Mo Lian held the dark moon sword in her hand, staring coldly at the salted fish on the ground. You are looking for death. He Jiao's body trembled violently. At the same time, everyone in the testing area was frightened by the person from the Celestial Light Academy. He had clearly only been injured by the blue bird, but now that he was rolling on the ground, his bones seemed to have softened, shrinking inch by inch, until he was like a boneless noodle lying on the ground. The scene in front of them made many of the female disciples cry out in fear. Some of them were so disgusted that they turned around and vomited. How was it possible to turn a living person into a smooth strand of noodles? No one knew, and of course, no one dared to go up and look for those bright and colorful little birds to try. Everyone huddled together and looked at Arbor in unison. The female disciple from the Chengwang Academy who had insulted Arbor asked in a trembling voice, Miss Jiao, can he still be saved? Li Lu pointed at the man who was lying on the ground as if he had lost all his marrow. Arbor shook his head. He used the handkerchief to wrap the man's arm, lifted it up, and threw it. The man's arm fell to the ground like a soft noodle. All the bones in his body are shattered. Arbor looked at the man on the ground sympathetically. Unless you have the bone-sculpting divine pill, there's nothing you can do. As for things like the bone-molding divine pill, it was still not something she could produce at the moment. At the very least, he was lacking in medicinal herbs. Everyone nodded in understanding, and Li Lu didn't say anything else. Although the people from the Chengwang Academy sympathized with their fellow disciple, they couldn't force a little girl to be treated. Sigh. Everyone sighed. Li Lu and the Noodle Man looked at each other with pleading eyes and turned to Arbor. Chapter 2043. Miss Chiao, can I ask you for a favor? Li Lu was silent for a long time before he said, can you give me a poison pill so that I can send him away? This person already had no chance of prolonging his life. Forcing him to drag on would only make him suffer more. Rather than that, it would be better for her to send him on his way. Everyone was silent in response. The noodle man's painful and twisted expression, as well as his pleading eyes, were all seen in their eyes. Only Li Lu said such words. Arbor glanced at the girl. She was a very thin person and couldn't be said to be very good-looking. Just now, when they were fighting the blood bats, she had even argued with her, saying that she didn't do anything, that even such a young girl had her own softness in her heart. Arbor nodded and raised his hand to throw her a black pill. Li Lu nodded at her and turned to look at his classmate whose cheekbones were sunken in. It was very difficult for him to even show an expression. Stealing his heart, he sealed the black pill in that person's mouth with one hand and tightly covered his mouth with another. He turned his head away, unable to bear to look. Captain Duanmu, what should we do now? Yu Axan from the Sunlight Academy asked with a slightly gloomy expression. They felt as if they had been cheated by someone. They had participated in the third competition in this testing environment, but they didn't expect that 2 people would die in succession. This situation made everyone feel that something was wrong. They were all young people, and the more outstanding ones among the young people. None of them were fools. How could they not know that there was something strange about this? The captain of the Heavenly Bestow Academy stood at the back of the crowd with his 5 team members. He glanced at them indifferently and gave his team members a look. The 6 of them quietly retreated to the side, not wanting to get involved in this matter. Most of them were the substitutes brought along. If it weren't for Shen Xinran and Zhuang Meng's group, of course, they wouldn't have had to go up. As for this test, Mentor he had told them not to touch any living things in the testing environment as much as possible and to delay as much time as possible. Once the time was up, Mentor he would open the shield outside and let them out. Thus, compared to the impatient appearances of the students from the other academies, the members of the Heavenly Bestow Academy appeared to be very calm. Then do we need to catch more birds? Feng Tong from the Sunlight Academy asked weakly. Are you stupid? Yu Axan rolled her eyes at him. Look at the state we're in now, what's the point of catching a bird? Whoever went up would die. You're asking for trouble. I don't know what kind of ghost birds these are, but why are they so harmful to the human body when they explode? Everyone, have an idea. Duanmu Qing suddenly shouted. Increase the defense. Everyone, combine the defensive barriers. The birds above are about to swoop down. What? Everyone was shocked, and at the same time, they waved their own defensive shields. No matter if it was a defensive profound artifact or a spirit artifact, all of them were activated. At this moment, everyone was clearly of one mind, working together to deal with the birds in the sky. Even the students of the Heavenly Bestow Academy, who had been calm and composed, were dumbfounded at this moment. They hurriedly returned to the main group and simultaneously activated their defensive spiritual artifacts. Chapter 2044. It was no wonder that the Heavenly Bestowing Academy students were panicking. Tutor he clearly didn't tell them this before they entered the testing environment. Why were the birds above them still swooping down at this moment? No one cared about what the Heavenly Bestowing Academy students were thinking. With a wave of their hands, a thick defensive barrier appeared in front of them. At this moment, there were already dozens of birds flying down from the sky. Arbor raised her hand and threw out a circle of ebony defensive talismans to block the sky. With a loud boom, 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 the birds exploded one after another, shattering the hundreds of defensive talismans in front of them. Everyone saw it clearly, and not a single one of them wasn't terrified. However, the flock of birds had already descended from the sky, and no one had time to think about other things. At this moment, all their attention was on how to block the attacks of the birds. Qi Xianxian couldn't help but smile bitterly. I didn't think that there would be a day when we would be attacked by these bright and beautiful little fellows. And they were covered in dirt and grime so miserably. What the hell are these? Master, I have a way to subdue these little fellows. Just as Arbor was concentrating on dealing with the birds, she suddenly heard a small and happy voice from her conscious. Master, do you want to raise a few explosive birds? On the other side, Duanmu Qing's voice was cold as he said, I have read about it in books before. Some unconventional clans are very good at raising poisonous insects or low-grade spirit beasts in groups. Although these spirit beasts' levels are not high, they always appear in groups and often cause great harm to humans. If there are no accidents, only the leaf family of the underworld region's Thousand Poisons family will raise these birds. Duanmu Qing said coldly, everyone be careful. These little fellows look very harmless, but after they explode, the damage to the human body is very great. Also, they have extremely strong corrosive toxins. Oh! Little Fatty came to a sudden realization. If that's the case, the student from the Qinguang Academy had exposed a large portion of his hand not because of the explosion, but because the surface of his skin was corroded by the explosive bird. Duanmu Qing nodded and turned to look at Arbor. Jojo, how many defensive talismans do we have left? How long can we last? Arbor frowned and communicated with Xiao Xiao for a while. I can take them all away. Ah. Would they explode inside the storage talisman? What if we rush out again? Mata asked worriedly. That's not a good idea. If worse comes to worst, we can just continue to hold on. Don't slack off, Sunlight Academy's Su Liang said. Since she said she has a way to take it away, why don't we let her take it away? Peng Guang of Moonlight Academy screamed. Peng Guang. The Moonlight Academy team leader glared at him. You talk too much. Just do your job well. Arbor looked at Duanmu Qing and the others indifferently. It's fine. I have a way to deal with it. Qi Xianxian hurriedly tugged at her sleeve and said in a low voice, you can't keep them inside. These things are too powerful. If they are destroyed, it would be a loss. Don't worry. Arbor patted her hand comfortingly. I know what I'm doing. Qi Xianxian, Little Fatty, and the others all knew that Jojo wanted to take these explosive birds into Paradise Planet, so they were very worried. Chapter 2045. They didn't know if these exploding birds would negatively affect that paradise that was as beautiful as a fairyland. They didn't wish for that paradise to be destroyed by these disgusting exploding birds. That would be too heart-wrenching. It's fine. Arbor gave Duanmu Qing and the others a calm gaze and said a few more words to Xiao Xiao. Then, with a wave of her hand, she drew in an endless stream of spiritual conscious and sucked all the exploding birds into the Paradise's 100 Poison Valley. Just as the exploding birds, who had changed their environment in the blink of an eye, were about to explode collectively, they saw a dense swarm of poison-tailed butterflies crazily rush forward and surround them. Qiao Mu was still a bit worried, so she enveloped a radius of 50 kilometers from top to bottom of 100 Poison Valley with her spiritual conscious. Once Xiao Xiao couldn't suppress these little things and the exploding birds wanted to make a move, she would at most spend a large amount of spiritual conscious to suppress them. But in this way, if she expended too much spiritual conscious, it would cause her to be mentally exhausted for a short period of time. On the other side, the miserable He Jiao trembled all over as if he was having an epileptic seizure. Under Mo Lian's soul-searching palm, his entire body trembled. Before long, Mo Lian threw away the man in her hand like she was throwing away trash. She didn't even spare him a glance as he foamed at the mouth. She directly reached out and sucked the spiritual energy ring that was originally on Hong Chi's finger into her palm. She threw out a bronze cauldron from her inner world and immediately sucked that ring in. With a light press of the cauldron, Mo Lien struck out a wisp of black fire. Everyone only saw a black flame scuttle out from the bottom of the bronze cauldron. The temperature of the entire room seemed to have been ignited and rose by quite a bit. When the mentors from the other schools saw his actions, they couldn't help but be speechless. Even mentor Zhou Danjin and the others were a bit shocked. Only Yu Gui and Chen Hanzi from the Holy Water sect were completely unperturbed. If they had known earlier that the Crown Prince's artificing skills were superb, those defective golems from back then could beat them until their hands hurt. What's the problem with reforging this spiritual artifact ring? The bronze cauldron operated for nearly half a quarter of an hour. Suddenly, the lid of the cauldron was slapped open by his hand. A gust of steam was emitted from the cauldron, and a small golden ring was spat out with a puff. Prince Mo squeezed it in his hand as if he was squeezing an ant. His handsome face was cold. With just a light pinch of 2 fingers, everyone was frightened to hear a subtle "kacha" sound. What followed was Qi Xianxian, Yu Axian, and the others' cries of "Io, Io." Caught off guard, the people from Arbor felt as if they had been hit by a hammer in the testing environment. One after another, they landed in the ring. With a slight movement of his ink robes, Mo Lien's tall and slender figure abruptly appeared beside Qiao Mu, and he pulled her into his embrace. "Qiao Qiao." He heaved a sigh of relief and raised his hand to stroke her hair. He looked at her gently and asked, "Are you hurt?" "No." Arbor reached out to grab his finger. Just now, Mo Lien was too impatient and directly used his hand to slap open the cauldron's lid. As a result, his fingertip was scalded and left a red mark. "Are you stupid? What could happen to me?" Arbor grumpily glared at him. "Emisham. I'm worried about my Jojo." He hugged her and gently patted her. What should he do? It seemed like his heart would only be at ease if he hugged her. Chapter 2046. Arbor raised his head to look at him, then his gaze suddenly drifted to the side. When this person spoke, his doting demeanor and gentle tone, coupled with that peerlessly beautiful face, inexplicably made people flustered. Miss Chow felt her little heart pounding in her chest, as if it was about to jump out. Calm down, calm down." The little fellow silently chanted these 2 words in the depths of her heart. She reached out a small paw and stroked his face. "Don't worry, I'm fine." Not only was this test daunting, but she even gained a bunch of interesting little fellows. It could be said that the risk was worth it. Mo Lien wanted to laugh, but he held back. He reached out to take her little paw and held it in his hand. "Jojo." "Chirp." He openly kissed his little wife's face. He leaned close to her ear and whispered a few words, then his gaze shifted to He Jiao, who was lying on the ground and laughing foolishly. Arbor's gaze turned cold, and he followed his gaze. "It's this person." Mo Lien nodded and said in a low voice, "It's confirmed without a doubt that he's from the Clear Sky sect." In the process of searching his soul, he discovered Fan Chioha and his aunt. They're in Clear Sky Valley right now. Arbor's eyes lit up. It was truly a case of searching high and low for something, only to find it by chance. If Fan Chioha and his aunt were willing to obediently hide in Clear Sky Valley, it would be convenient for her to settle accounts with them. "Everyone, come over." Zhou Dan sighed in relief and waved at them with a smile. "Are you all right?" Fortunately, it was a close call. The person who schemed against you has now been taken care of by His Highness the Crown Prince. Wei Wei also nodded and said, "The points are out. Let's go take a look." Someone called out, and everyone rushed to the place where the rankings were announced. First place in the Academy ranking tournament, Ani Prefecture's Juching Academy's Li Nanshan's team. Second place in the Academy ranking tournament, Shuntian Prefecture's Moonlight Academy's Zhou Zhao's team. As for third place, it wasn't one of the top 10 academies in the 6 prefectures continent, but a dark horse that jumped up. Shuntian Prefecture's top academy, third place in the overall strength rankings of the Academy ranking tournament. This made many people's jaws drop, including those who were not optimistic about them. As for the individual ranking, Arbor was ranked third. After all, Li Nanshan's cultivation was much higher than hers. Her third-level cultivation, cough, dragged down her points by quite a bit. This was the reason why the instructors were looking at her with disdain. The spirit realm was so good, and the cultivation resources were hundreds and thousands of times better than other people's, but he didn't work hard. All the mentors looked at her with a look that said they expected better from her. This caused Miss Chiao to look down at her clothes many times. Strange, she didn't wear it inside out. Wei Wei secretly kicked Instructor Zhou. The latter turned around and glared at him. He braced himself and stepped forward. Student Chiao, the instructors have discussed and decided to focus on training you in the coming days. Arbor looked at him impassively. In the next year, I hope you can live up to the expectations of your mentors. You can still improve your cultivation. Wei Wei kicked him again. Instructor Zhou was so angry that he changed his words. Well, the instructors plan to let you improve a lot. It's best if you can reach the cultivation of a 7th or 8th level spirit master. Everyone looked at Instructor Zhou as if they were looking at a god. How can you boast like this? Little Chiao is currently a 3rd level spirit master. Chapter 2047. Let her raise her cultivation by 5 ranks in the next year. Your entire family. Everyone rolled their eyes silently in their hearts, but they didn't say anything. Arbor still looked at them expressionlessly. Don't wander around if you don't have anything special to do. Instructor Zhou. Chao Yan from the Sunlight Academy walked over with a smile on his face. Congratulations to all of you. You have obtained the right to use Brinset Island's spirit domain for the next 3 years. You will also receive a large amount of resources from the island. Zhou Danjin naturally smiled so widely that his teeth could be seen. Well said, well said. You let us win. Chao Dan smiled as he glanced at Zhou Danjin, Wei Wei, and the others. He shook his head and said, everyone is too modest. The students of your academy are all extraordinarily talented and intelligent. In the future, your names will definitely shake the 6 prefectures. Ahahaha. Instructor Zhou originally wanted to exchange some pleasantries with Chao Yan, but in the end, he only heard his immodest laughter. After the ranking competition ended. Early the next morning, everyone impatiently set off for Brinset Island. Looking at the expectant smiles on the young faces of the students, Arbor raised his hand and touched the round droplet on his palm. He said softly, let's wait for the 15th day. There was no need to rush at this moment. At the very least, she had to let these people cultivate for 15 days. Once she refined the entire spirit realm, then everyone would be very disappointed. Master Silver, don't be anxious. Little Tree's body is already slowly recovering. Arbor nodded slightly. The dark spirit jade vein that he had found in Mount Dai Zone had been given to the little tree. It was obvious that after the little tree absorbed the dark spirit jade daily, its withered trunk and leaves had improved a little. However, this was far from enough to support its recovery. After all, this tree was supporting the entire star domain even when it was unconscious. The spirit energy in the star domain couldn't be used too much at this time, lest Little Tree's origin was damaged again. If large amounts of spirit energy from Brinset Island's 3 spirit domains were injected into Paradise Planet. Arbor's heart warmed slightly. There was hope for the little tree to wake up. A flock of seabirds flew over the surface of the sea, flapping their wings as they glided across the surface of the water, leaving behind a trail of cool water droplets that sprinkled on her cheeks. "Are you cold?" Jojo, Mo Lien lifted her sleeve to wipe off the water droplets on the little girl's face and held her little hand. After all, it was almost the end of December. The air was filled with the smell of salty and slightly cold seawater. The wind was blowing, and it was already a little cold. Mo Lien took out a cloak made of gold and silver silk and put it on the little fellow. Her slender fingers went through the thin belt and lowered her head to fasten a buckle for her. "Winter will probably come early this year. I heard that the winters in the 6 prefectures aren't that great." Mo Lien pulled her into his arms and stroked her back. "But don't worry. I'm here. Jojo won't catch a cold." Arbor. Where did this drama queen come from? She was a level 3 spirit master with an immortal bone constitution. How could she be afraid of the cold? "I have the sacred fire body," Mo Lien whispered in her ear. "It's best to hug and keep warm in winter." Arbor's little mouth twitched. She looked like she wanted to laugh but couldn't. This guy really had enough. Mo Lien lowered his head with a smile and rubbed her cheek. Chapter 2048. Jojo, every word I say comes from the bottom of my heart. Arbor suddenly reached out and hugged his waist, rubbing against him with all her might. "You can hug me for as long as you want, no need to find excuses." Miss Chiao stretched out her hands with a "I'll let you hug me" expression. Mo Lien glanced at her and couldn't help but be amused. The little fellow's asking for a hug look was too seductive. No, this look that could melt one's heart couldn't be casually seen by others. Mo Lien pettily used her cloak to cover the little fellow's head, reached out and carried her horizontally, and quickly walked towards their small bedroom in the cabin. "Jojo, it's windy outside, let's talk inside." Arbor looked at the sky and looked at the clear sky in the distance, then turned to look at Mo Lien. Suddenly, she opened her small mouth and bit his lips. Prince Mo was completely stunned, and the footsteps he took also froze slightly. The little fellow turned to look at him, and her gaze drifted away. Of course, she wouldn't tell this fellow that just now, in that instant, she had inexplicably impulsively wanted to pounce on him, hug him, and take a big bite out of him. What was this saying? It was probably called, "Wine doesn't intoxicate you, but you get drunk on yourself." Clearly, they hadn't drunk, but looking at the handsome face in front of her, Arbor's vision clearly became somewhat blurry. For the next 15 days or so. Everyone was in the 3 spirit regions on Brinset Island, doing their best to absorb the spiritual energy and seize the time to cultivate. Rather than saying that Brinset Island was an island, it was better to say that it was a group of islands. The spirit regions that were developed were probably less than 1/10 the size of the entire Brinset Island. Everyone said that there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 spirit regions on Brinset Island. However, everyone's naked eyes might not be able to detect them. 15 days later, under the protection of Mo Lien, He Chen and the others, Arbor began to refine the largest spirit region on the island. Her refinement of the mystic realm could be said to have reached the point of perfection. Of course, the size of the secret realm and the amount of spiritual power would also affect the time she needed to condense the secret realm. Normally, the refining process would be completed within 2 hours. If everything went smoothly, it would only take about an hour. As the spirit energy of heaven and earth surged wildly and shook, the vast spirit realm Arbor was in began to crack bit by bit. Until a white jade bead appeared in Arbor's hand. The entire spirit realm instantly collapsed into nothingness. The group of people from Moonlight Academy who were seizing the time to cultivate in Spirit Realm opened their eyes in confusion. At this moment, Arbor was already running towards the smallest of the 3 spirit realms. After spending more than half an hour to refine the small spiritual domain, at this time on the island, there was already a puzzled noise. Arbor left the last spirit realm to everyone. After all, everyone had gone through many difficult matches, and it wasn't easy for them to get a chance to cultivate in Spirit Realm. She'd better stop before going too far. What the hell is going on? Instructor Chow Dan of Sunlight Academy jumped up from his chair as if his buttocks were on fire. That's right. Why are the cultivation domains collapsing one after another out of nowhere? Only this last spirit realm is left, it won't also collapse, right? Zhou Dan asked worriedly. Everyone looked at each other. Chapter 2049. Arbor stood expressionlessly in the crowd. No one could see the slightest emotion on her face. This child wore a stoic expression as if nothing had happened as she watched everyone argue for a long time without coming to a conclusion. She couldn't help but say helplessly, rather than arguing here for half a day, why don't we quickly enter the remaining spirit realm and cultivate properly? Instructor Wei Wei nodded approvingly. Well said. Now that there was only one spirit realm left that could be used, the remaining students, who added up to about 20 people, entered together. Arbor gave Mo Lien a look and left the spirit realm like a wisp of smoke. Little Water, can you help me integrate these 2 spirit realms into Paradise Planet? Arbor asked with a serious expression. Previously, Little Ball had helped her integrate the refined secret realms into the Star Realm. Although the integration process wasn't wonderful, as long as she could help Little Ball, she would do anything. I can, Master Silver. However, if you integrate 2 spirit realms into the Star Realm at the same time, this way, it will be quite painful. Master Silver. Little Water Child fiddled with 2 thick carrot-like hands and asked, do you still want to continue? Arbor nodded resolutely. We can begin. Naturally, it would take a certain amount of time to transfer all the spirit energy from the 2 spirit realms into Paradise Planet. During this time, Mo Lien, Gu Shichen, and the others could only silently guard her. Seeing her frown in pain and her fists involuntarily clenched tightly, they knew that the feeling of this spirit energy injection was definitely not pleasant. Unfortunately, there were many people present, and no one could bear it for her. This time, the process of injecting spirit energy into Paradise Planet took more than 4 hours. Fortunately, in the later stages, Little Ball seemed to have gained a trace of self-awareness and was also desperately absorbing the spirit energy that was being injected into Paradise Planet. As a result, Arbor felt a lot more relaxed, and the pain was also reduced. It seemed that the sapling had helped her relieve some of the pain, making her feel a little better during the process. After successfully injecting all the spiritual energy from the 2 spirit domains into Paradise Planet, Arbor opened a pair of cold eyes and immediately met the worried gazes of everyone. While Arbor was injecting her spirit, Instructor Zhou and the others, who were slow to realize what was going on, took the initiative to walk over and silently guard her. Seeing her open her eyes, everyone was overjoyed. Jojo, are you all right? Qi Xianxian asked as she held her hand. Arbor nodded and jumped up. Moving his little arms and legs, he looked down at himself and his eyes lit up. I've advanced. He wouldn't have known if he didn't mention it, but now that he did, he was shocked. Instructor Zhou and the others stared at her in confusion. After sizing her up, they couldn't help but cry out, Level 4 Spirit Master. This little brat had advanced without a sound or movement. Oh, of course, it couldn't be said that there was no movement. During the process of injecting spirit, all the spirit energy within 100 miles was absorbed by her. But how could it be so easy to advance? Arbor was also very happy. It was probably because the sapling had accidentally leaked some spirit energy from the spirit domains to her when it was absorbing it. She was also a pitiful child. Opening her inner vision, she found that the sapling's branches and leaves had become very green. It was obviously a huge change from its previous listless appearance. Wake up and make up for it. Chapter 2050. Cho-cho, cho-cho. Arbor happily called out to him a few times. Seeing that he didn't respond, she wasn't discouraged. After injecting such a large amount of spiritual energy into the star domain today, in addition to the water child helping Cho-cho absorb the black spirit jade every day, Xiao Mu believed that Cho-cho would definitely be able to recover to normal in at most 2 to 3 months. It might even be able to advance further. Instructor, I have some personal matters to take care of. Will you continue to cultivate in the spirit domain on Brinset Island? Let's go together. Zhou Danjin made a prompt decision. What kind of joke was this? If not for Li Nanshan and the others, they would have gone to Fish Orchid Planet to cultivate long ago. After all, cultivating for a day on Fish Orchid Planet was only 2 hours in the outside world. Cultivating for 12 days was only 1 day in the outside world. This was a lot of extra cultivation time for nothing. In a world where time was a cultivation resource, a spirit domain where time flowed 12 times faster than the outside world was practically a miracle. Xiao Mu nodded when she heard this. She had already successively taken in 2 spiritual domains from Brinset Island, so she would leave the remaining spiritual domain for the other academies to cultivate properly. Her companions also did not need to compete with others for this pitiful amount of resources. Thinking about it, Li Nanshan and the others were quite pitiful. They worked so hard in so many competitions, but in the end, they didn't gain much. Miss Qiao silently sympathized with them. Expressionlessly, she said to Instructor Zhou and the others, then go to Fish Orchid Planet to cultivate. Second martial uncle, senior sister, you should go as well. Cultivate well during this time. I'll have little water temporarily block the star domain. When the time came, the instructors naturally wouldn't know that she was going to clear Sky Valley to kill people. Jojo, what are you going to do? Young Shirong walked up and took her small hand. Is there any danger? Martial uncle, don't worry. I will accompany Jojo. Prince Mo pointed at Ji Qin, little Taisui, and the others. And them. Who's your martial uncle? Stinky brat. Young Shirong glared at Prince Mo angrily and raised her hand to rub her little martial nephew's head. Don't put yourself in danger. If there's anything you need help with, just tell us. Arbor nodded and looked at Yang Shirong with bright eyes. It's just a small matter. I can handle it alone. Qiao. Before Qi Xianxian could say anything, she saw Arbor turn around and throw a porcelain bottle at her. Go into seclusion. Come see me after you've broken through to the spirit realm. With that, he asked Holy Water Diandian to pull everyone into Fish Orchid Star to cultivate in seclusion. Master Silver, do you want to shield the entire starfield? Arbor nodded decisively. After the shield, other than the contract beasts that were connected to Arbor, all the people and beasts in the star field would not be able to see or hear what was going on outside the star field. She was going to kill someone that he could not let second Uncle Master and senior sisters see his ferocious and evil look. She had always been a good baby in the hearts of her Uncle Master and senior sisters because she didn't know what she would do next. Are you ready? Fan Chioha. Do you see the Grim Reaper waving at you? The pain of being chiseled into my body in my previous life, the resentment of being hunted down in this life, the hatred of being surrounded and killed, everything that you owe me will be paid back to me stroke by stroke. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.